Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Tuesday, June 16th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. A variety of things have happened over the past 24 hours, which we will be discussing. We have the Fed FOMC meeting that is going to be happening tomorrow, I think at 2:30 p.m. So I will be live for that meeting, and it will be the first meeting for Kevin Warsh. So I think in general, markets are trying to figure out how to adjust to what Warsh is going to say, how he's going to react. Oil did fall below $80 for the first time meaningfully in the past couple of weeks. I know we touched below 80 last night, but right now we actually are seriously below 80. I mean, take a look at this. We are right here at 77 a barrel on crude. Ironically, the actual markets aren't up as much as I would think they would be up in the pre-markets. You've got some individual names that are rocketing, other names that are kind of flat. Broader S&P is red. You would think oil coming down this much would have a little bit more of an impact. Now, obviously, yesterday was a really good day. We were up almost 1.5%. But still, it is nice to see oil coming down. And, I mean, Kevin Warsh is getting what he needs at the right time, having oil come down, which could at least get inflation expectations to come down, which hopefully does not incite the necessity of a rate hike. So tomorrow's going to be a big day. We'll be talking about how the market reacts to it, and obviously we'll be taking a look at Kevin Warsh's first FOMC meeting. Overnight, SpaceX at a massive move. We will talk more about SpaceX as well. Now, pre-markets, that move has faded pretty aggressively. I am really curious to see if that move comes back. 229 is what it hit at the highs last night in the overnight markets. And by the way, it wasn't a small amount of volume. It was almost 7 million shares. So I know that's not much compared to the 300 million shares that were traded yesterday, but still, that's a decent chunk of, I mean, most stocks do not get 7 million shares traded in the overnight markets. SpaceX did. Now in the pre-markets, it's barely holding above 200, 201.89 right there, fell below 201 first, fell below 200 for a little bit at 199.85. But obviously it's worked out. And, well, if you bought at 150, 135, 170, 180, I mean, it has worked out. There's a lot of reasons why this IPO is working that are more technical that we'll talk about that, quite frankly, I think most people are realizing for the first time today. And so we'll go through kind of what is really affecting this stock to be able to make the move that it's making. But it is officially happening, and you're seeing the move right here. On top of that, SpaceX officially acquired Cursor in an all-stock deal. So quite frankly, they were able to pump up the stock to levels that are basically 50% higher from the IPO price, a little bit more than 50%. And they officially announced today $60 billion in stock to be able to acquire Cursor. So it's not a cash deal, which because they don't have 60 billion in cash. I mean, they technically do because they just raised 85 billion in the IPO, but they probably don't want to use 60 of that 85 billion to acquire Cursor. But the stock now is going to be diluted enough to be able to have the transaction take place. And I mean, you got to give it to Elon. All is going according to plan so far. And as long as this IPO continues to play out the way he thinks it's going to play out, and again, we'll talk about the mechanics on how it is playing out and what to expect over the next coming months. You know, maybe this continues to go up and to the right as we're seeing here for SpaceX. Obviously, valuation on it is hard to comprehend. We'll talk more about some of the specifics on the valuation. It has overtaken Amazon. I think it's just under Amazon now in the pre-market because of the... Actually, no, it's above Amazon pre-market because it was at 2.5 trillion yesterday. Amazon's at 2.6, and yesterday that was at 192. So it's basically matching Amazon's market cap, if not slightly above it. Last night in the pre-market, it was almost matching Microsoft's market cap, and at one point it did hit 3 trillion on 20 billion of revenue and $5 billion of losses. So it's this, you know, when people say, oh, it's not a bubble, we shouldn't be too afraid, like everything's strong, you got earnings, momentum, inflation coming down. And this type of behavior is what makes you start to think, wait a second, how much exuberance, excitement, liquidity is actually out there for something like this to happen? Thank goodness this has never happened on NVIDIA or any of the other large cap names outside of Tesla, because then people would legit be saying, you know, I mean, SpaceX is 3x more expensive than Cisco was in the dot-com bubble, right? Like if that were to be happening on NVIDIA, Meta, Amazon, I think a lot of people would be scared. That's not happening. The exact opposite is happening. But it is happening on SpaceX, and maybe that is going to be a unique phenomena that specifically happens for SpaceX, or maybe this thing is going to crash pretty ugly. So we're going to talk about all the different variations of kind of how this can play out and what could happen. All right, let's get into it. We got a bunch of updates. We got some Robinhood news. We got a bunch of macro news. Trump is at the G7 summit talking up this Iran deal, supposedly this conceptual framework, definitely getting the markets to be more excited. We got Jim Chanos, who's officially short the neoclouds. So we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what he's seeing right there. The NeoCloud's a little red in the pre-market. Nebius right there, that's down about 2%. CoreWeave is down about 1.1%. Rackspace signed their official agreement with AMD today. That's why that stock is up 20% right there. They had an MOU with AMD about a month ago. It is officially real today. So that agreement is why Rackspace right there up 20% based on that AMD partnership. I think it's about 80 megawatts of contracted power that they've agreed to. And that's why you're seeing Rackspace get some momentum. Okay, let's get into it. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is Tuesday, June 16th. Again, markets will be closed on Friday. Tomorrow will be the first FOMC. We will get into everything in terms of the details for FOMC. But until then, we got a lot of price action to analyze today, along with a lot of different updates that we got to break through from what happened last night. All right, so let's get started. I think real quick, let's do the Robinhood news, and then we'll get into some of the macro stuff, and then we'll get deeper into SpaceX. So Robinhood is laying off 10% of their employees, which is 290 roles. The goal is to flatten management layers and operate more efficiently. And CEO Vlad Tenev put out a tweet with some comments on it. Did not expect them to have layoffs here. Their argument is around being a flattened hierarchy and organization. I think there's two other reasons they're doing this. Robinhood was at 101.50 in the pre-markets based on this. I think now it's at 99.60. I think one is inevitable. AI is probably playing a role. Now, I can't say that for sure. They're not obviously blaming AI. Politically, they would not want to blame AI. But maybe there's just a bunch of people at the company that probably aren't that effective. And quite frankly, engineers that are using AI are more productive, and they're letting go of some people. That could be one of the reasons. The other reason is, the company did not have a good Q1 earnings, right? They only grew revenue by 15%, and that's just not going to cut it for the multiple that they're at. So if they could save some costs, maybe that is part of the reason why they're doing this, especially, Robinhood, if you've talked to any of the employees, it's a ruthless organization. Absolutely ruthless. I've talked to a variety of employees that are there. Vlad works his ass off, but the employees also. He sets the culture of how hard to work, and it's just not a place to go if you want work-life balance. You're just not going to get that at Robinhood. And obviously the stock has reflected that over the past couple of years in terms of the intensity of work that's there. So realistically, if you're not putting up the work, if you're not, pulling your weight, you're going to get hit. Here's what Vlad said. I want to be transparent about why this is happening. Robinhood's business has never been stronger, but to achieve the massive scale of our mission, we cannot default to operating as a heavily layered organization. We must be a lean, hyper-focused team where every single individual is empowered to make a massive impact. When he says every single individual is empowered to make a massive impact, in my opinion, he's subliminally saying there's a lot of you guys at the company, 290 to be exact, that are just not making as big of an impact as we need in the age of AI for us to be growing at the level that we need to be growing at. Our execution is strong today, but our ambition requires us to continuously raise our own bar. To achieve that, today we are flattening our org structure and reducing our overall team by 10% of headcount. So, he went on to say the goal is to maximize our talent density and ensure that our culture is defined by an absolute elite performance bar and a superlative commitment to our customers. This transition creates even more opportunities for our most talented people to grow and take on greater responsibility. To me, again, that's reading as, hey, the people that we have are doing such a good job that we don't need any dead weight. And quite frankly, I would imagine AI is helping those people supercharge their capabilities, which really means we don't need any dead weight. As a shareholder, I think it makes sense for them from a cost savings perspective. The market's obviously going to like it. The question is going to be, how much more productive do they get? But that is the decision that they've made. And Robinhood already was a flat organization. They had less than 3,000 employees. It's not like they had a massive workforce. So the fact that they're even doing layoffs means that they probably want to make sure they have the most effective people as possible. Robinhood right there, 99.70 in the pre-markets as that one goes green. All right, macro, Trump, what did he say yesterday? Well, he has been making the argument that this Iran deal is important. He was very happy about the stock market. Here's what he said yesterday with Macron. And then we'll talk about some more updates. It looks like Iran has agreed to this memorandum of understanding, by the way, and that's why I think oil is going down the way it is. But regardless of what the specifics of the deal are, it looks like both sides have agreed to some level of a conceptual framework to get to a deal, which is why oil continues to drop as hard as it is.
We've worked on many deals together. I'm very happy to say very signed. The deal's all signed. And the strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines that they've already found. But it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened. We got along very well with Iran. It's a different set of leaders. As you know, the first set is gone, the second set is gone, and we found the third set to be very smart, strong, very smart, but we ended up making a deal. I felt badly that we had to go back on the attack for 2 nights, and I thought a third, but we made it before that happened. But I think a lot of great things are going to happen in the Middle East right now, and very importantly, the oil is plummeting down, and the stock market is shooting up like a rocket today, like record kind of numbers. And the oil has taken its biggest plunge, and we're into the low numbers, not quite back yet, Kevin, to the extent, but we're getting close to the numbers we were before it all started. And the main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
So you can even tell how Trump is talking about the war being over is he is once again incredibly happy that the markets are up and oil is down, because at the end of the day, he ran the entire campaign in 2024 on the economy because we had massive inflation with Biden. And his argument was, I will bring inflation down, I will bring more jobs, and I will get the stock market to go up. And, the Iran excursion, as he calls it, has taken a lot of energy away from that. And it looks like he wants to get back to focusing on that, especially getting into July 4th and obviously getting into the midterms that are coming up. So look, SPY, it's in an interesting spot. Yesterday we had a good day. It was up 2%. It did get rejected at 756, fell to 754.80. I'd be very curious today to see if this thing actually loses 750 and we start to have a little bit of a downturn and some of this stuff normalizes a bit, or if we bust right through 760 and that's our all-time highs going into the Fed FOMC meeting. I think FOMC is going to be a coin flip. You just don't know what's going to happen, how Warsh is going to be able to come out and navigate expectations. But in general, the trend is green. I mean, Micron hit 1133 in the pre-markets. That's basically at an all-time high. You got some of your Mag 7s that are down a little bit. Marvell, the CFO, sold 50% of his stake. Now, the CFO is leaving to go to Adobe, but nonetheless, 50% of his stake is a bit aggressive, which is why that stock's down 3%. But Marvell was at 244. Now it's, at 300. So, I mean, you look across the board, yesterday was a pretty green day. You had some individual sectors that went red, some individual stocks inside of individual sectors like the software names or the semi names or fintech taking a bit of a breather. But overall, the logical syllogism for how this market continues to make the next leg up is oil goes down, inflation expectations go down dramatically, rate cut expectations go up dramatically, and then boom, the earnings growth hopefully catapults you into a new all-time high. Now, the problem here is the earnings expectations. I think part of the mainstream narrative that is now being pitched as the bear case, at least that's what I heard from some of the sell-side equity analysts yesterday, one of those being Bank of America, is that they don't believe Q2 earnings are going to be as substantial as Q1 earnings on the beats. And if they are not as substantial and the multiples on these stocks are substantial, that means the earnings can't live up to the multiple, which is literally what happened with Robinhood in the last earnings. And as a result, that's your bear case for the market right now. I don't think that's a crazy argument because there might be a world in which these companies don't have massive earnings. But I also think there's a world in which these companies do have really good earnings, even if it's not as good as Q1. And that's not enough to collapse an AMD back to the 300s, which, at this point is chilling around the 540s. Amcor having a nice little move pre-market. That had a great move yesterday. Wow, there you go, 90. As that continues to go higher, 5.7%. Again, packaging demand. There's not that many companies that handle packaging. There's a handful of them in the United States that have relationships with TSM, Intel, Apple, Broadcom, and Amcor is one of them, as that is up 4.6%. So yeah, the same happened with Broadcom. That is correct. Broadcom, I mean, great earnings. The problem is the earnings. I mean, literally the argument on why Q2 could be a bear case for the market, it was identified through Robinhood and Broadcom. Robinhood, good earnings. Well, decent earnings, not earnings to the level that they needed. That stock fell 20%. Broadcom, amazing earnings. They just didn't raise the guide. And that's probably because they wanted to protect themselves and sandbag a little bit so they could have a better beat next quarter. And as a result of that, they got hit 480 to 490 to like 370 now to 393. So imagine that happens throughout all the big tech companies in Q2, which is that it's a good earnings, a decent earnings, maybe even a great earnings, but they miss on one or two little things, margins, guide, etc. And the street's like, oh no, these multiples are too aggressive. So, theoretically, if that could happen, that also would not be the best thing in the world. But it is a risk now that has to be factored in if you're buying buying stocks at these high levels. But a lot of these stocks, again, one could argue are not at crazy high levels. Meta right there, still below 600, as that is also down in the in the pre-market right there. NVIDIA, that one tried to make a run yesterday, couldn't really, went up 3%, fell down 0.7%. Let's talk about NVIDIA real quick, and then we'll get into SpaceX. The bond offering from NVIDIA seems like it was now much more reasonable. There's a couple of layers to analyze here. Number one is they had 85 billion of demand for 20 billion of bond issuance. So they ended up raising it to 25 billion. Officially, they did a 7-part bond sale for 25 billion, but they had 4x the amount of demand for the 20 billion that they put out there, which means, you know, there was more than enough demand to compensate for NVIDIA. Number two, in the 8K that they released, they had a lot of sort of fancy jargon for explaining why they did it. But essentially, when you break it down and kind of try to understand, you know, the logic that they're putting out there, it sounded like they were basically saying to the market, don't be afraid that the hyperscalers are raising debt, because we, the godfather of this entire AI revolution that has led to all this momentum and technology and the ones that everyone have to pay the NVIDIA tax to, we are also raising debt. And they framed it in a way that said we can use this for buybacks, general corporate purposes, yada, yada. But I think the sort of broader undertones of their argument here to the market was, do not be afraid when the hyperscalers issue debt or equity, because we also need to do that. Now, they probably don't need to do that because they have so much free cash flow and the credit rates are not necessary for them to be able to tap the debt markets. But if they do, it kind of lets the market know that everyone's doing it. So we shouldn't be upset if Meta does it or Microsoft does it or Google does it. And I actually think that's really smart, to be honest. Like, I think that's very, very smart. It's NVIDIA coming in clutch right here and basically telling the market it's okay for companies of our size in this AI revolution to be able to raise debt or equity, because there's just so much CapEx that's needed. Obviously, all that CapEx, who does it help? At the end of the day, it helps NVIDIA. But it doesn't seem like it was the most bearish thing. And, you know, stock didn't collapse below 200 when the market ended up hearing what it was. So, yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Also, I mean, NVIDIA is not going to have any problem paying back their debt. The fact that it was 4x oversubscribed means there's plenty of demand for NVIDIA debt if they ever needed to actually issue more debt or equity. So it doesn't seem like it's the most concerning. But to me, it was just a play to get the market to not be afraid in this AI revolution of more and more debt equity being issued, probably also by the neoclouds that are likely going to have to do that as well. Corby right there, that's up 1.2%. Nebius, that is down about 2.1%. All right, SpaceX. So let's talk about some of the numbers. Last night, it got up to 230. Right now, it's at 201.74. The fact that it's even in the 200s means it's basically the market cap of Amazon. And there's obviously a lot of questions on how this is happening. Well, it looks like there's one thing that is very important to understand. By the way, shout out to Jose, who, not our semiconductor Jose, but a different Jose on X, who tweeted this picture at me. He was at a Costco and he saw someone buying SpaceX at 210 in the 24-hour markets. And obviously they're bag holding some of those shares at 210. But yeah, the FOMO and the exuberance and the excitement is definitely out there. Now, why is it out there? Well, apparently only 5% of the float is available to be traded right now. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people, including myself, probably didn't understand when it went public. And this is the most important element of the financial engineering of this IPO. So we all knew that there was a certain tier level where the shares had to go up to in order for lockups to be released. What I think most people didn't understand is that 95% of the float is basically locked up until December. And during this moment, the indices still have to buy it. So you're at a point in time where you have until Q2 earnings for 20% of the shares to get released. Then you have a performance trigger. If the stock is 30% above the IPO, then 10% gets released. And then from August to basically December, Elon doesn't even get it opened up until June of 2027. You have another 30% of the shares getting released. Right now, there's only about 4 to 5% of the float that's out there. So the fully diluted value of the company functionally isn't even 3 trillion because those shares aren't even out there. The market cap ends up becoming 3 trillion because of the value of share versus the number of shares that are out there. But it's more like a couple hundred billion. And as a result of that, it's now starting to trade like a meme stock. Why is it starting to trade like a meme stock? Because there is massive amount of demand for something that obviously does not have the fundamentals to justify it. I don't think I need to go into that. Amazon does 800 billion of revenue and makes money. SpaceX does 20 billion of revenue, does not make any money. But there is such a little bit of amount of a float of shares that are available that you obviously have all these people that are FOMOing in. And now as the stock goes even higher, you have more people chasing a small amount of shares. This is kind of what happened with Cerberus. It's just Cerberus couldn't hold up the hype. So it's still happening with Cerberus. 90% of the float is locked up, but Cerberus's hype obviously wasn't as aggressive as SpaceX. They don't have Elon Musk. So this is now a question of hype. This is now a question of hype, in my opinion. Obviously, I can't justify the numbers. I don't think anyone can justify the numbers. The fact that the stock fell from 220 to 200 pre-markets is probably a lot of people waking up and they were like, wait a second, what? This thing I bought at 150, 160 that I thought maybe next year could get above 200 is at 200 less than 48 hours later. Yeah, I'm out. And they're taking some profits. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that happening because obviously the stock has been traded 750 million times over the past 2 days, which means there's a lot of people that ended up buying it that are probably up a lot. And if this thing falls up to 180 or falls down to 180 and you bought at 150 and then you miss selling at 200 or 220, like you might start to think, you know what, there's no way this thing can even hold out to these levels. And I'm selling. So I think the dynamics of SpaceX are now going to primarily be how much aggression does retail have to buy the dip, assuming this thing will flip back up and the hype will be sustained. Obviously, the institutional investors will have to buy it because of the NASDAQ forced index listing. But also, how much aggression will sellers have once it gets to these certain levels that just feels unsustainable? And I don't know what's going to play out. I think a lot of people have to make their own conclusion of this. If you want to trade this, not trade this. I took a couple trades on SpaceX yesterday, bought at like 177, sold at 179. So for me, even like seeing a $2-3 move, because every dollar it moves is 13 billion added to market cap, is aggressive. And so the fact that it moved $40 yesterday, and oh, by the way, SpaceX added $415 billion in market cap in a single day yesterday. It's the most that has ever happened. It's 2 Ethereums, essentially, in the history of the stock market. There's never been, even NVIDIA's best day was $275 billion. You've never had $400 billion added in market cap. And so when you kind of look at these stats and see how it's playing out, you start to ask yourself, is this sustainable? Does this make sense? Why is this happening? And the fact that they're adding options today with 380 strikes for June 18th, which means today someone can buy a call for $380 expiring in 2 days. When you have that level of momentum and excitement coming into the name, I wonder if that's either A, a blow off top, or B, this thing is going to the literal moon because of that much excitement that is getting in there. So, look, it doesn't make sense. It obviously doesn't make sense. I don't think it has to make sense. This is one of those markets where, the less things that have made sense is the easier for people to make money on, quite frankly. And I think that's okay. That's what happens sometimes in a bull market. It's really based on your risk potential and risk appetite to be able to take that risk. And if you have the appetite to take the risk at 150, 160, you made money. If you didn't, then you kind of sit back and see how this thing ends up playing out. SpaceX ended up raising $85 billion, $85.7 billion on the IPO by offering 638 million shares. So they were able to actually get 10 billion above what they wanted at 75 billion, which means the liquidity was there. The money was there. The valuation, once again, is really hard to get to. And I'm curious today, it's at 198 pre-market right here. I mean, it was pushing 230 last night. Is this a temporary dip, and when the market opens, people just run back into this? Or is this walking itself back to 170? And that entire move was a one-day sequence that kind of marked the short-term top of SpaceX. Once again, there's not that many shares that are out there. So that's why I'm saying it goes back to hype. As long as the hype is there, you've got a lot of people chasing a very small amount of shares. And you've probably got some diamond hand IPO investors that are not selling the shares they got at 135. If the hype dies out for whatever reason, there could be any reason for it to die out, then obviously this thing could get pretty ugly. When are they going to dilute? I don't think they're going to need to dilute because they just raised 85 billion. I mean, it would be hilarious if SpaceX just raised 85 billion and was like, hey, we're going to do another equity raise by diluting. Google did it, so we can do it. But yeah, I don't think that would happen. But who knows? Maybe if the stock is to 250, Elon's like, well, I guess we underpriced the IPO and there's more demand than expected. But I also wonder if it takes away momentum. I mean, the memory stocks were down yesterday in the pre-market. Memory stocks going down right here in the pre-market as well. Overnight, Micron was actually down about 4%. And I think part of the reason why the memory stocks were down, which are the highest momentum stocks in the market, is because a lot of that liquidity was going to SpaceX, which has now turned into, I think, the most driven momentum stock in the market. Marvell right there, that's down about 3.5% as well. Tesla also saw a lot of tweets from some Tesla power investors last night being pretty pissed off that a lot of this excitement is going to SpaceX over Tesla. And yeah, the Tesla SpaceX merger might be the thing that ends up resolving it. But, if you're a Tesla shareholder, past couple of years haven't been that fun, especially if you bought at certain levels. You have to really buy the drawdowns to be able to benefit. If not, it didn't really play out better than a lot of the other Max 7 names. Is that the same fate for SpaceX, or, does this thing have a totally different narrative that gets the street to be more excited? 197.60. You're seeing a lot of sell orders come in right here on SpaceX. 2.5% up. 192.50 is where it closed yesterday. At the actual market close. Micron right there, up about $2. Again, it was at 1133 pre-market, now at 1090. Rackspace, that partnership with AMD, that's why that's up 21%. Got Reddit, that's down a little bit. Reddit had a good day yesterday. Microsoft, that's down about 0.5%. SMH down 0.5%. Rocket Lab down 1.85. HIMS down 1.5. HIMS that did get the $30 close. A lot of names getting some red pre-market, not crazy red. SpaceX getting the bulk of the red from those 220 highs, but still slightly green. Meta's also red. And so today is going to be interesting before the Fed chair meeting tomorrow on seeing how this actually ends up playing out. Is the merger confirmed? The merger is not confirmed, but obviously there's been a lot of speculation that the merger will happen. Even the SpaceX COO and president kind of basically said it was going to be happening without saying it was going to be happening. And so obviously if that continues to happen, and that speculation gets more exciting, then maybe that, also, people are saying Elon says 1 trillion in revenue by 2030. How are you going to get there? You either 50x SpaceX's revenue or you combine it with Tesla's revenue. And maybe that's an easier way to make it happen. Speaking of Tesla, Goldman now expects Tesla to deliver 420,000 vehicles in Q2, up from its 405,000 forecast. I don't know if deliveries on vehicles on Tesla even matter anymore, but the point is the expectations are a bit higher. Obviously, FSD and robotics has been the big story. That has not necessarily played out yet. But it looks like those expectations for car sales should be better than what it was in Q2. Here's Evercore, Julian Emanuel, his thoughts on this new Fed meeting and his bull case for the S&P as we get into Kevin Warsh's first FOMC.
Pleasure. A bit of a rally in the markets over the last couple of trading sessions. And you think it's not just this potential peace deal with Iran that's driving things. You think there's some SpaceX that's really behind some of this too.
No question about it. And if you look, again, the public is very engaged in equity market investing. And throughout history, the public is particularly engaged in tech stocks. And this was one of these times, and we've seen it over the last several years, is that the public tends to lead the professionals. There was a degree of skepticism around this IPO, but the public was fully enthused, and you're seeing it in terms of the price now. But the other unexpected bonus is now oil has a 7 handle to it, and that is a big positive in our view.
We're going to talk more about oil in just a moment, but your target right now for the S&P 500 is 7,750, but you say this opens the door for the bull case, and your bull case is 9,000.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So basically, when you think about how bull markets, particularly tech-driven structural bull markets, unfold, there are several elements that end bull markets, and to the negative, it's recession. It's a Fed that's going to be hiking rates. That is quickly going off the table with the decline in oil over the last week. Long end yields moving higher. None of that's happening. The last element that ends bull markets is typically what we see, a period of intense FOMO driven by capital markets. And to us, that's still ahead. But the other difference is that earnings power is a lot greater than any of us thought it was going to be. So even though the market's moved as much as it has, multiples are still not stretched.
Yeah, Rick Reeder was on yesterday.
So once again, that argument about multiples not being stretched because of earnings growth, that is why Q2 earnings are going to be the most important earnings of the year. Because now, if we stay at these levels that we're trading at going into the earnings, you don't have a lot of bear cases around the macro, especially as oil comes down. So you have to have the bull case on earnings continue to increase, which means guidance has to increase, so estimates increase, so that multiples can increase. And if that doesn't happen, then maybe these stocks consolidate. So earnings into Q2, I think, is the bull case, but it also is the reason why we even have a chance at hitting 9,000, in the words of Evercore.
and he was saying that there's a ton of money in money markets right now on the sidelines that still can be put to use. And maybe we haven't seen all of that deployed. It looked like maybe we saw some semiconductor sales for people who wanted to take their profits and put money into SpaceX. Potentially, same story with crypto. It's doing a little better and performing better today. But what about that money on the sidelines?
So just to address semis, if you see some of the names doubling, tripling, quadrupling over several months, it's natural to expect a little bit of profit taking, which is what we saw prior to SpaceX. But again, to your point, Becky, $8 trillion in money market funds. And guess what? Interest rates, yields on those money market funds, we thought they may be rising over the last few weeks. That does not appear to be the case, as I think the view will end up being that we are in the peak of inflation, and it is likely to cool down over the rest of the year.
I will say, when you were on with us back in March 11th, you called the top of the oil market. I think Joe gave you a little bit of grief about that. It was at 120 or something.
Why? What did
I don't know.
say?
That's what it says in the notes. This is what Julian said.
What did I say to you?
I think it was more of a sort of a, well.
Just ribbing him a little, I think.
Yeah.
Because I don't think
It sounded counter to what I think you were kind of on that same boat.
Because after day two, to make a statement like that, it was make a statement like that is kind of bold and differentiated. But what we were looking at is this idea that fear tends to be a very quick reflex reaction. And if you look at when Putin invaded Ukraine, the top of the oil market happened very quickly after the initial violence. And so, we kind of thought the same scenario would play out.
The people that, or at least the market participants that were very excited for oil to climb up to 150, 200, I think the one thing that was misfactored is the idea that every single entity on the planet, outside of a few of them, don't want oil to go up, right? So many times oil goes up as a result of certain events that are forced into the price of oil, geopolitical events, invasions, et cetera. But most market participants want the price of oil to go down. So short oil has obviously worked out over the past couple months. It's obviously been necessary for stocks to be viewed more favorably. Long oil could be a hedge now, but long oil, when it was at levels that really no one wanted it to be at, assuming it would get to even higher levels, it's kind of like buying a stock that, just keeps going up and up and up, assuming that it'll keep going up and eventually gravity takes its pull, especially if it's as simple as ending the war to get this thing to come down. And again, for those that are just joining, oil nicely below 80 in the pre-markets. If this thing can continue heading down, you just got a really good macro backdrop. Even if stocks don't do that well, you've got a great macro backdrop for Kevin Warsh to say, look, I know inflation's bad right now, but with oil prices being 75% of the reason, energy index being 75% of the reason for why CPI and PPI the past 2 months have been so aggressive, if that's coming down, then we just can't have these backward-looking ways of thinking about inflation expectations, which is why the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that Kevin Warsh is likely not going to put out a dot plot. The Fed is having their first day of the two-day meeting today, and I think he's going to try to convince potentially the other 11 governors that we shouldn't have these crazy expectations and put them out into the market for years out when we don't even know what's going to happen months from now. And maybe that reform of the Fed is also going to be, a very differentiated way of how the market has to interpret what this Fed is going to be doing or how this Fed is going to be operating. So tomorrow's going to be an important day. Obviously, we're going to really have to see how the market reacts to this. But I think today's also going to be important because, once again, SpaceX is going to be the biggest story right here. Can this thing actually normalize above 200, which would, basically be putting it above Amazon's market cap? Or is this thing a house of cards? And I don't think we fully know exactly what's going to happen there or how it's going to happen. A couple of other different macro updates. China's retail sales fell for the first time in over 3 years. May data showed a 0.6% drop in consumer spending, the first contraction since December 2022 on China. Some of those Chinese stocks getting hit in the pre-market. But obviously the American consumer has been very, very resilient in the face of so many different headwinds. You can't say that for every single consumer across the world, but China has been able to hold on. Also, this is what the president of SpaceX said about the Cursor IPO. They are acquiring them for $60 billion. They're looking at our models. We're looking at their models. Their data set, their training data was incredible. It was excellent. And so that's good. We have compute. Basically, it ended up being a kind of another model company that we could collaborate with closely. And that's fundamentally how I would characterize it. We're going to collaborate closely. We think this makes a huge amount of sense, but we'll make a final decision in a few months. They ended up making that final decision today as they are buying Cursor. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to get the money to do that. I don't think they're going to use the IPO money, but I also think they've already factored in the dilution that would be happening for the $60 billion they have to spend on Cursor in the S1. So I don't know if that's a net new $60 billion they have to get from somewhere, or that's been factored in before going public. I would have to get some more details on that. Robinhood as well, back to 100 in the pre-market. But nonetheless, as the stock pumps higher, maybe that's another headwind for the name, because if they end up diluting more to acquire Cursor, that could be some more shares going on to the market, which obviously would not be the best. It is all stock. That is correct. It is not cash. It is all stock. They're getting loans against their shares of SpaceX. Dude, look, if I'm a bank and Elon wants to have a conversation about getting some loans against, the company shares, it's like, sure, but man, this thing is volatile. I mean, for NVIDIA, I get why the banks lined up to give them a loan. For SpaceX, you have a lot of demand, but is that demand going to hold up the higher the price goes up, just because people get afraid of how aggressive this stock ends up becoming? Elon did do the same with Twitter. That is fair. And, he ended up fixing that entire acquisition by having XAI buy it and then having SpaceX buy XAI. Nebius right there, down 1.3%. Nebius, CoreWeave, and Iran has a new personality that is shorting them, Mr. Jim Chanos. He thinks the business models make absolutely no sense. Here's what he said yesterday.
If we turn our attention to the neoclouds like CoreWeave or Nebius, it's even worse because those are, when you boil it down, those are equipment leasing businesses, right? They buy a chip from NVIDIA and then they turn around and lease the chip to a hyperscaler or to a pure AI software company like Anthropic or OpenAI. And there the bet is on depreciation and whether or not you can get the chips from the supplier. So we were talking a little bit earlier, it gets back to the point that we've made to clients that anybody that's just a middleman in this chain, like the data center guys are, either as REITs or equipment leasing companies, should never trade at higher multiples than the company that controls their supply, Taiwan Semi and NVIDIA, AMD, and so on, right? They're price takers in all sense of the word. They're middlemen. And so it's really, we're at the point in the bull market where all of these stocks have gone to premium valuations. And I suspect at some point in the near intermediate future, we're going to start to get to the point in the market where people are going to begin to really analyze the business models and say, okay, what's special and what's a commodity?
So look, Chanos has not got every single short right. He blew up his fund a decade ago with Tesla and the short on Tesla. That one, obviously, it didn't work. He ended up making a decent amount on the MicroStrategy short, even though the logic for why he shorted it didn't exactly play out. He thought Bitcoin would go up, MSTR would lose its premium, and ended up being the opposite. He made money on it, but Bitcoin went down. That's why MSTR went down. So it wasn't really a premium contraction argument the way that he thought it was going to be. In terms of the neoclouds, I think part of his argument around the chip designers should not be trading at a smaller multiple than the neocloud, the fact that a Nebius or CoreWeave are more expensive than a Broadcom or a NVIDIA starts to raise some red flags about why is this much being paid for this versus the actual company that's, these companies are renting their GPUs from. But I think that goes back down to market cap and just the small nature of the companies. NVIDIA is $5 trillion, those guys are $50 billion. Nonetheless, you could still make the argument about multiples. But I think the core argument he's missing there is around not only the compute constraints, but the value of how each token gets generated. And this is something Nebius has done a really good job communicating why they want to be a native AI cloud themselves, a hyperscaler cloud, not just a neo cloud, why they want compute to be distributed, why they want it to be more democratized, why they don't want a couple of companies to have access to all the compute, because then that makes model costs more aggressive. Whereas if you have these open source architectures, it's an easier way to distribute all that compute. Now, Nebius has been more aggressive in terms of taking that frame of reference. CoreWeave doesn't necessarily talk about things like that. Iren doesn't really talk about things like that. So some of the neoclouds are obviously better than others. And the Ciphers, the Wolves, the APLDs, they've gotten big contracts. The question is, can they really transform themselves into businesses that can be sustainable outside of just leasing GPUs, which is what Chanos is essentially accusing them of being, fancy REITs, fancy AI data center REITs. But I think there's an argument on the bear case that obviously needs to be evaluated. I just don't think the bear case in an incredibly compute constrained environment makes sense. I also think the Anthropic Fable news getting banned from the government is actually really bullish for the neoclouds because it democratizes compute in a more aggressive way and gives more sovereign access to these neoclouds to actually distribute that compute. So look, if we get a bear market, if we get the S&P topping, if semis start to take a fall, obviously the neocloud, I mean, we saw Nebius go to 204, CoreWeave go to 90 last week. Those get hit pretty badly. They are incredibly high beta. But if you believe in the broader CapEx thesis, we just need more and more players supplying that compute. And that's why those neoclouds get a lot more exciting. All right, here we go. We got 2 minutes until this market opens. S&P, we are slightly red pre-markets in the poll. You guys have 65% green, 37% red. Today's going to be interesting. I think SpaceX is going to be leading the way. I'm very curious. Volume's already 13 million on SpaceX in the pre-market. And so we are going to have to see how the market thinks about this. How much money is sitting in money market funds? 7.83 trillion is the exact number I got from last night. Now, remember, money market funds, the most that came into money market funds in 2008 when things got really bad, or I should say 2009 when rates basically went negative, was 500 billion. We've never actually had $1 trillion leave money market funds and go into the equity markets. Now, granted, we've never had 8 trillion on the sidelines. It's usually averaged 3 to 4 trillion. And then during COVID, it spiked up. But if we were to get even a couple $100 billion leave money markets and go into the equity markets, if not $1 trillion, like some people are calling for, that would be a massive injection of capital that we've never seen in the history of the transfer from money market funds to equity markets. So although a lot of that money is on the side, the question is how low can rates go to get people to say, I'd rather buy Meta at 13 times forward earnings versus get 3% of my money or 2.5% of my money. But that all comes down to Kevin Warsh. And, tomorrow's going to be really important as we cover what's going to happen with Kevin Warsh. All right, here we go. Tuesday, June 16th. No mute gang. I need to hear you. 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. SpaceX opens at 2.67 trillion. That is now matching Amazon's market cap at above. Amazon's at 2.66. SpaceX is at 2.67. 204 is the open. That's up 7%. 205. It hit 229 last night in the overnight markets. We're going to see if this one can get right back up there. NVIDIA, 210. That goes red. Micron, almost 1,100. That's up 0.5%. Broadcom goes red. AMD goes red. Robinhood with the 10% layoffs today. That's almost at 100, up 1.7%. Rackspace with that AMD partnership. That's up 14. CoreWeave, 110. That's green. Nebius, up 0.5%. That is also green. ServiceNow, that goes red. Marvell, that's basically flattish, but slightly red. Tesla loses some Momo right there. That's down 2.5%. Tesla 411 to 400 as SpaceX continues to go higher, as SpaceX continues to go higher, ladies and gentlemen. 209. It topped out around 212 in the pre-market, 230 last night. So if it breaks through 212, maybe it's going right back up to 230. My goodness. Seagate, that's up 5%. Mercado Libre, which had an insider buy yesterday, that's up 0.5%. Nubank, that's up 0.5% as well. Lumentum's down. AAOI is down. Some of your optics plays are down. Bloom Energy, that's down 1/3%. Whereas Palantir, that is also red by 1.4%. There she goes. It looks like she's going to break 212. Oh my goodness. 2.7 trillion. There it is. There it is on Mr. SpaceX. 9.5% up on the day. 196 pre-market ended up being a fake out, at least for now, as this one has surged higher. SpaceX is now more valuable than Meta, which is at 1.5 trillion. Meta trying to hit 600. Microsoft is at 2.9. So SpaceX is about 5% away from surpassing Microsoft. And then you got the Googs, which ended up going green as well, 370. That's up 0.1%, 4.48 trillion. Nvidia continues to not be able to catch a bid, 210 right there, as that is down 1.1%. All right, so bulls came in the first couple minutes of trading on SpaceX. 50 million shares so far. This thing is struggling to stay above 207. So that 204 to 211 range has been what it's oscillating between, but you just see so many orders going back and forth. Nvidia loses 210. Micron ends up going red. SpaceX did buy Cursor, 60 billion. That is happening. Robinhood 101.50. Again, they are laying off 10% of their workforce, which should result in about 20 million of cost structured savings. The street usually likes those types of announcements. And so this might be part of the reason you got a lot of insider buys on Robinhood over the past couple weeks. Oh, Robinhood also said in the morning that June trading volumes are their highest in history, and it's only been 15 days in June. So obviously retail investors have showed up pretty aggressively in the month of June, and May was also a really good month. So if July can be decent as well, then you have a good Q2 on your hands. Google 370, SpaceX 206, holding above 200. CoreWeave holding on. The price to sales on SpaceX, CoreWeave almost 112. Price to sales on SpaceX is 140. You're paying 140 times for SpaceX. ELF, that is green. 2 green days in a row for Mr. ELF. Not bad. ASTS and Rocket Lab, are those green? ASTS is green, almost at 90. Rocket Lab is red. Interesting. This space trade has been weird the past 3 days. Sometimes you have the space proxies go up. Other times you have the space proxies go down. Sometimes you have SpaceX go up, space proxies go up. But they've never all gone up into the right, like I think some people thought they would, which has basically been a sell the news on some of the space names and a buy the dip on the other one. SPY, 754.93. Trying to get back above 755. Amcor, I didn't see a headline on Amcor today, but it is moving. I might have missed one. I don't know if I see one here, or a price target. Amcor, oh yeah, this is it. TSM and Amcor signed a 10-year agreement for advanced packaging. Under the deal, TSM will procure services from Amcor's Arizona campus, connecting TSMC's U.S. chip manufacturing with Amcor's U.S. packaging and test capacity. All right, there you go. That'll do it. 10-year agreement, no dollar amount, but that is enough for the street to probably get very excited for a $22 billion company that is basically one of the most important packaging companies in the United States. Robinhood right there, 98.84. Google now going red. Microsoft definitively going red, 392 again, as that's down. Oh, this might be why Tesla's down. U.S. senators are asking the NHTSA to review Tesla's self-published FSD safety data after a Reuters report questioned the company's crash comparisons. That might be part of the reason Tesla's getting hit right there. Oscar, almost 30. Nabesis, are we almost 270? We are trying 264. CoreWeave, trying to get up to 115. This was at 107 yesterday. That's up 6% on today. Reddit goes red. Had a good day yesterday. Wasn't able to hold on, at least today. But an 11% move yesterday, not bad. Qualcomm, 192 to 230. Qualcomm potentially is going to be buying a company, Tensorent, Jim Keller's company, for $10 billion, which might be their play into data center chips, potentially, or at least help their ambitions for that. So that's why that stock's getting a bit more of a bid right there as the street's excited for that acquisition. SMH basically flat on the day. HIMS holding above 30 as well. OSS got a new partnership this morning. That's why that stock gets a 12% move. OSS just been, a monster in terms of getting these government prototype contracts. And so that one extending the momentum there, up 12%. CoreWeave 113. Where is SpaceX? 209, folks. I mean, it is holding a 2.72 trillion, 55 million shares officially have been traded on this thing today. Coinbase, that's also up about 2.3%. Bitcoin, that is down. Not really catching a bid, just a little below 66. Oil, 77.69. Again, that's, I think, the big argument for today. Oil continues to go down, and the market continues to be happy about that. And you're seeing it play out in the most high beta of high beta names. Where's the S&P? S&P 754.96. As that continues to go green. Danny says selling puts on SpaceX. The premiums are amazing. Okay, so the premiums obviously are going to be incredible. It's just, you got to be ready to take an assignment of those shares. So, if I had to sell a put on SpaceX, I'd probably be closer to like 170. But obviously, if you're selling a put at 200 and you're okay with getting assigned at 200, the premiums are going to be great. Oh, the options should be open right now, right? Let's see. Yeah, the options are open right now. There you go. This is just going to increase even more volatility. Dude, the $380 call in the first 7 minutes expiring Thursday, because Friday the market's closed, has already had 5,000 contracts traded. The 320, 400 contracts. 325, 150 contracts. 285, 300 contracts. 220, 3,700 contracts. 230, 2,000 contracts. I mean, people are straight up buying calls. Maybe they're selling those calls as well, but they are absolutely trading these options for not a month out, for 2 days out. Let's check on the put side. The puts for, let's do 180. 1,500 puts have been traded. 170, 1,100 puts have been traded. 150 at 500 puts. All right, so the options market obviously heating up pretty nicely for SpaceX. CoreWeave right there, nice 7% move, 114. 114 as that tries to go into that 115 move. Nebius CoreWeave is Iran moving as well. Iran, yep, got in through 61. And then Cypher up about 3.6% as well. S&P officially turns green. Nebius almost 270. Amcor 9281. ASTS up 2. Robinhood still getting stuck below 100. It touches 100, but it's just not able to break out above it yet. Might take a couple more days or just a little bit more volume to get there. VG, that's down, obviously, as oil continues to come down. Grabs up 2%. Keel is up 4.68%. Nokia continues to have a red day, down 2.3%. It was down 3% yesterday. Redwire also down 4%. Viavi, that's also red like it was yesterday. Mercado Libre, 1676. Not sure why Palantir's getting hit, but I feel like it's a lot of software once again. I mean, who's buying software with SpaceX trading like this, right? Yeah, look at all the software names. The only green names are Adobe by 20 cents, MongoDB by $1. Everything else goes red. Salesforce, Oracle, Atlassian, Snowflake, Datadog, CrowdStrike, Twilio, Intuit, ServiceNow, GitLab, and Palantir. Micron, are we at all-time highs? Basically, I mean, who's buying Palantir or Snowflake or Datadog when Micron and SpaceX are pushing all-time highs? It's tough. It's tough to get super excited about the undervalued names right here, or when CoreWeave and Nebius are pushing 5-7% in a day. I mean, a lot of those names, I think, are taking some of the capital right here. The fact that Microsoft cannot reasonably hold above 395 is pretty unbelievable. But that one is getting hit. Does Robinhood Ventures Fund have SpaceX? Yes, they had a SpaceX stake a while ago. But I don't know what price they got it at. That's why that's up 17% on the day as well. They said they had SpaceX. I don't know how much of SpaceX they have, but that was announced a bit ago, or maybe they even bought it at the IPO. I don't know. But they do have some. SPY right there, 755 as well. Broadcom had an insider buy yesterday, which is bullish, but the stock continues to go down. Again, these are really big companies. It's crazy of me to say that with SpaceX being 700 billion larger than Broadcom. But the big company thesis doesn't apply to SpaceX. But Broadcom, NVIDIA, again, they're really big. Street might be looking at smaller companies, even though the really big names are the ones that are actually putting up all the earnings growth and should be rewarded for it, but they are not. They are not the beneficiaries of that reward. SpaceX 212 is the level, folks, that it has to break. Breaks 212, I think it's off to the races. It's 211 right there. Got rejected at 211.50 in the pre-market. And it looks like it wants 212. 9% up, 2.76 trillion right there on SpaceX. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable, dude. There you go, 212. There it is. And the thing is now, let's say it goes to 220 and then it drops to 200. That's, people would say, well, that's a dip. 220 to 200 is a dip. I got to buy that dip. And the fact that that could be the dip zone that people buy is where I think this could start to normalize at a price that is significantly higher than the IPO price. Qualcomm right there, 213 as well. We don't have a short float yet on SpaceX. It's only been a couple of days. I don't know what the short float would look like. I would imagine people are going to try to short it. And, you know, they tried to short Tesla for years until that didn't work out. I wonder if the same happens here with SpaceX. Now, again, obviously, the big reason that this thing is pumping as much is because there's only 5% of the float available. People knew there would be a short float. I don't think people knew there would be this short of a float. And as the SEC filings have revealed the compensation package and the IPO lockup period, it's now becoming obvious that this is an incredibly short amount of shares to play with, or small amount of shares to play with. And as a result, you know, you got the hype around it. People are chasing it. SoFi right there, making a nice move, up 2.4%. It's obviously going to take a pump. ARM, are we getting to all-time highs? ARM, wow. ARM as well, all-time highs. This thing was at 380 last night, 423 right here as that continues to make a move. Is the Qualcomm Investor Day today? If that's the reason, that could also explain why Qualcomm is getting a bid. We're probably going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. PayPal, is that up? PayPal is up about 3.2%. That one going a big green. Yeah, I wonder if Burry would short it. I really wonder. I mean, there's no way he's not looking at this thinking that it's going to be a juicy short. But like, if he does, I think it's going to put more fuel on the fire. And people would just be so excited to buy it, to squeeze him out as well. June 24th is the investor day. Okay, so that should be a catalyst for them as well. There it is, folks. It is the nature of this market. Someone just bought 13 million of SpaceX 210 calls. That's the premium that's coming in for January 2027. Strike is 210. And then someone bought 1.5 million of SpaceX calls 270. Strike is August 21st. And again, every dollar is 13 billion on SpaceX. So if this thing were to get to 270, I mean, basically for it to get to, 5 trillion, you're looking at another about $100, I think will get you there, roundabout. About another, $140. So call it around 350-ish. That takes over NVIDIA at that point. CoreWeave, 8%. As that continues to go green. Rocket Lab, 105. That one goes down. That one goes down. You don't know if it was a buy or a sell. There is a way to tell if it's a buy or sell. If it's above the ask, then it's usually a buy, right? Because if the premium is, you usually don't sell above the ask and get filled above the ask. So if you're paying above the ask on the premium, it's more likely than not a buy, but obviously there can be some discrepancies. The point is there's just so much volume going into these calls already. And that option flow, that option flow forces the market makers to have to buy stock as well because they need to deliver those shares, which just puts even more pressure. Then you have the indices getting ready to buy. And that just becomes, pretty dramatic there. Bitcoin, are we still down? We are up a little bit above 66. Western Digital, again, the memory names have just gone incredible. 712 right there. That's up 9%. I actually interviewed a CEO of a public company yesterday, Box, Aaron Levy. Some people might know him. It's enterprise storage and AI data management. I'll pull out the interview tomorrow, but he, his company manages file and enterprise data storage, and his take on Micron and memory was that, he said he doesn't know how to play the stocks, but the demand for memory is just not slowing down. Just like the demand for compute is not slowing down, the more agents that we have working, the more memory that's going to be needed to be able to execute a lot of that work. And as long as the pricing power stays strong, which is like sort of the big question, Micron's going to be able to have their multiple respected, if not increased. But I think that's why Seagate, Western Digital, all of them have caught the bid that they've caught. Nebius and CoreWeave, they're both making a move. Both making a pretty aggressive move right there. Jim Chanos can't be too happy. I wonder how big the short is on the neoclouds as well. I wonder if it's like as big as his MicroStrategy bet. Because the way he was talking about it was a way that, if you read between the lines, sounds like he thinks these are absolute bubbles waiting to pop, which means you would imagine it's a pretty heavy short. But if it is, that could end up going the opposite direction and really hurting him. Nubank right there, that's up 1.4. Mercado Libre, a lot of insider buys on that. That is up. SoFi, are we trying to get 18? She's trying. She is trying. There she goes, SpaceX. 220, folks. She's looking for it. I think she's looking for Mr. 220 right there. My goodness, dude. 12% up on the day. 2.83 trillion. So Microsoft is basically a few dollars away at this point. 220 would do it. 217. 220 would do it. It would be greater than Microsoft here. It's crazy, right? That is crazy. Oh my gosh. 218. Microsoft still 2.9. SpaceX at 2.85. Again, it's a low float, and a lot of people are chasing it. That's it. I don't know how many people are fundamentally buying it at this level for a return. I think a lot of people are buying it for the chase. SPY right there, 755.30. Shopify, are we getting a little bit of a bid? Shopee a little bit. Okay. Some of the software names waking up. Reddit almost going green. Palantir trying to go green, but still red. ARM at 418. Meta finally back above 600. Oh, what did Meta say today? They said Threads has 500 million users, monthly actives, and the platform is expanding their communities to Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, and having a new algorithm that allows users to adjust their feed topics in a more personalized way. Look, I don't use Threads, but it's a product that's growing. They are monetizing it. I think eventually it's going to be producing tens of billions of dollars of revenue for them. I mean, there's 500 million people a month that obviously use it. I think in a year or two, it's going to have 1 billion monthly users. Like, Meta knows how to grow these consumer products. So it's one thing that's not really talked about on the Meta thesis, but it absolutely is a tailwind for them, because eventually it should be producing some meaningful amounts of revenue. Shopify right there, 114.30 as well. Elon made more in a week than he did in the first 20 years. I'll give you an even better stat. Elon yesterday made more money in his net worth going up based on SpaceX going up than Warren Buffett made in profits in his entire career. Elon made 167 billion. Warren Buffett made 145 billion throughout the course of his career. So yeah, it's a little aggressive, but that's what happens when you own 60% of the company and it goes up 40% in 2 days. And if I'm Warren Buffett, I'm just like, man, I should have got into rockets instead of insurance, right? Like, if I'm Warren Buffett, maybe that would. This is crazy, dude. This is absolutely crazy. There's no other way to say it. But again, okay, here's my question. Who's buying SpaceX here? Put in the chat. Who has the risk appetite? Not just buying it as a trade, but like legit 216.98. You're going long. You're saying, all right, I'm holding on for the next few years. Because I think it's attracting a lot of traders. I think a lot of people are buying it at 216 right here, and they'll flip it at 220, and they'll say, all right, I made some good money. But I wonder who's buying it at 216 saying this is a deal, and I'm just going to hold. And if there's not that many people doing that, then, eventually this thing reverses when the shares get unlocked, because there has to be some exit liquidity for the people that are selling. But that's not happening right now, so that's why it's moving higher. Okay, like 99% of you are saying no. A couple people saying I just sold all my IPO shares. A couple people saying I'm holding from 150, 170. Edmund says my 50 IPO shares are up $4 grand. I'm just going to hold. Yeah, like if you got it at 135, I don't think you need to like run for the exits or anything, right? If you got it at 210 this morning, you start to wonder like, hey man, is 210 really a deal, or is this something where I should just take the money and get out of here if someone's willing to buy it at 218 from me, We saw this thing go to 197 in the pre-markets, so you saw this go the opposite direction. But as the markets open and the volume compounds, there's just more and more people that are excited. Amcor right there, 92.29, as that is up 8% on the day. Swiss Foreign Ministry says potential signing of U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding is currently scheduled for Friday, June 19th in central Switzerland. I wonder if Trump's going to be there, because Trump's in Switzerland right now for the G7 summit. So I feel like he would be there. I don't know who's going to be representing the Iranian delegation, but if Trump is there for the signing, that could be another catalyst the market looks for. SMCI, that's down 1%. Why is Rocket Lab down? I think because that Rocket Lab money is going into SpaceX. That is my elementary analysis on what I think is happening. I mean, what other reason is there, right? Like, you would think the biggest space company in the world uplifts all the other space companies, but it's the opposite. I think people sell this other space proxy, or people are going long SpaceX, short Rocket Lab. They might be doing a pair trade where they go long the company that only has 5% of the float available, even if they think it's overvalued, and they short the other space names that they could definitely think are overvalued, and just play it through that direction, assuming liquidity arbitrages from one stock in the sector from all the other stocks in the sector. Maybe that could be a trade that's taking place. Microsoft 394, trying to get up 395. Easy, thanks for the super chat. One of the Russell and NASDAQ ETFs forced to buy SpaceX. Just wait until they start buying. I think that's in the next 15 days, if I'm not wrong. NASDAQ definitely in the next 15 days. Russell, I think, in the next month. But yeah, that is also part of the reason why I think you've got buyers coming in and saying, screw it. And much go much higher. Dell, that's up 4%. Dell, this was at 385 yesterday, so this one flipped. NASDAQ's on Thursday. Okay, so then that buying, I mean, that there you go, 219, 2.87. It's getting ready to trail Microsoft. S&P is barely up, by the way. S&P is up a penny today. So it's not like the whole market's moving up in SpaceX, but this is independently SpaceX is moving. AppLovin, that's down 2.8%. SMCI, it's red on the day as well. Again, BlackRock's Rick Reeder said you have plenty of money on money market funds starting to potentially get unlocked, which I think could happen, but I think rates have to come down enough for that to happen. Just given historically, 2009, rates had to go to zero to even get $500 billion to enter the stock market. We have a lot of money in the market funds since then, but rates are still pretty attractive if you just want to get some flat return. So maybe that takes more time. So that means all the Max 7 are taking a hit on Thursday to make room for SpaceX. Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't functionally have to happen, but it theoretically could happen. 220, there it is on SpaceX. 87 million shares. 87 million shares. Amazon is 2.6 trillion. Dude, people have traded 5 million shares of Amazon today. No one cares about Amazon. Everyone cares about SpaceX. That's crazy. 5 million shares is just not a lot. Even Meta, 1 million shares. People care less about Meta than they care about Amazon. That is crazy. CoreWeave, big move here today. I don't see a headline on the NeoClouds here. I think, maybe they've just been depressed for the past week. Nebius got to 204. CoreWeave got to 90. Maybe NVIDIA diluting by 20 billion or raising 20 billion of debt was a good signal for all the NeoClouds as well, because NVIDIA has money to backstop them. I mean, there might be some characteristics the market's excited about. Zeta 2016, that's up 1.6. It was down 3% yesterday. CoreWeave got a price target raised to 167. Okay, that'll definitely help. CoreWeave got to 187 at the very, very top back in October, right? Yeah, I was right. 187 on the dot. No, it was June of 25. Okay, so this thing is still well off its IPO highs. but you're getting the price targets to start to match up right there. Mitt, I just bought 15,000 worth of SpaceX. Look, anyone who's buying right here, it is ultimately your decision. We're all adults. Everyone has to deal with it. I personally am not partaking in this. Traded it a couple times yesterday. I just cannot stomach the volatility of holding on to it. But quite frankly, I understand the thesis. If it's a low float and there's a lot of hype and there's forced index buying and then you have the options liquidity coming in, it just might pump, right? It's actually kind of a simple thesis. So it comes down to risk appetite on, wanting to be part of that pump. But, yesterday it went from 230 to 197 in less than an hour. So, I mean, that volatility can just hit really quick to the downside. You have to be careful managing it. Reddit, that's down about 1.7%. Well, Tesla just flipped green, 411, all right? This one was stuck almost below 400. Man, why wouldn't you sell puts on it? Dude, what if this thing collapses? Why would I sell puts if this thing collapses? Like, I don't want to bag hold a bunch of shares that I don't want to own just for some premium. The options market isn't even mature on this thing. The price action isn't even mature. We don't know how this thing is trading. It's been 3 days, 2.5 days, realistically. So I don't understand getting super excited about options on this yet. Like, you either are okay with the volatility to get the premium and you're confident it's not going to hit your level, or you're okay with getting the shares assigned. Now, look, it's all fun and games until it actually gets assigned. Like, you might sell a put at 200, be like, it's not going back to 200. It's like, dude, it went from 230 to 197 yesterday in the pre-market, or today in the pre-market. Like, it can happen. And until it happens, it seems like free money, but it might not be. But I don't know. Tanner says, Amit, I think we really need to think what this means for brokerages, Hood, eToro, IBKR. After this, we have Anthropic and OpenAI. Hood could be a big winner here. Yeah, I mean, look, Hood's volumes for June, they already announced this morning, have been the best they've had in history. So obviously this is really helping the brokerages. IBKR has had a lot of new record accounts. The problem is, my fear is that it's temporary, right? My fear is that like there's a lot of volume here, a lot of excitement, and then if the excitement and volume dies out, look, here's the worst case scenario. Let's say the excitement and volume dies out on SpaceX, and then the excitement and volume across everything high beta dies out for like months, which we just experienced in October 2025. If that were to happen, it's not necessarily a blow off the top, but it's definitely a moment of, okay, it's going to consolidate. It's going to take a breather. And then the brokerages have a really good Q2, but then Q3 is not the best. So then, we see the markets pump them up on the expectation that it continues, then it might just not continue. Now, can SpaceX trade basically $100 billion worth of stock every day for the next, I don't know, year, and have this thing pump 2% every other week? Like, maybe. But if it doesn't, look, remember, people start to fall out of love with the shiny object really quickly when the shiny object is not shiny anymore. I was talking about this yesterday with Poet, but this was another example of this. It's at 14. When it hit 25, everyone was excited. And then it fell back down to 8. And like, some people still cared, but a lot of people didn't care. If SpaceX becomes the shiny object of the moment that then stops shining, do people still care? Having said that, Elon is a pretty shiny personality. And as long as they can keep getting people excited about it, that might be enough to keep it going. But do you take the risk? Wow, there you go. Overtakes Microsoft. There it is. There it is. Overtakes Microsoft. 222, 2.9 trillion is there. And that has overtaken Microsoft. And when it keeps going up, the options just should keep flowing, which means more and more money should obviously be coming in right here. It's a crazy, crazy time to be alive. I agree. It has to be Mag 8. There's no way it's just Mag 7 now. If we don't put SpaceX in the Mag 8, I don't know when we're gonna do it. S&P is also red. S&P is red. I mean, it's kind of fun to see it happen, though, dude. Like, it is kind of fun. It's more fun than seeing this collapse to 100. Like, it is kind of cool to see how crazy can this become. it's also scary. If you don't have any money in it, you kind of just sit back and watch the show. If you have money in it, you really sit back and watch the show. But I think traders are taking it up. And the thing is, again, if it normalizes these levels, then every level below just feels like a dip to buy. Amazon has 40x the amount of gross profit and revenue with a better gross margin. Yeah. But it's not sending satellites into space. I mean, it kind of is with Amazon Leo, but SpaceX is doing it in a more exciting way. Folks, it is very close to 3 trillion. I think 230 basically puts her right at 2.99 trillion. Very, very close to getting there. Amazon is also a better business overall. Yeah, again, I don't think anyone's debating that, as Nebius also gets up 6% right here. I don't think anyone's debating if the Metas or the Amazons are better businesses based on their fundamentals. But, like, it's not about the fundamental evaluation of the company. And that's okay. Based on how that, I mean, look, the market is the market. The market will price it the way the market wants to price it. Market's just other humans thinking what it is worth, what it's not worth. And as of now, anyone thinking it's deserving to be worth $100, the market is saying you are wrong. Nike right there, 45, as that continues to go green as well. You know, and the nature of the market being forward-looking as well is important. The problem is, you know, you can forward look a lot. It would take 150 years at this point to pay back what SpaceX is trading for. So how forward-looking do you want to be? And you could have a high multiple if you have a really high growth rate, because it eventually collapses the multiple over time. This is kind of what we've seen with Palantir going into the multiple. But SpaceX does not really have a high growth rate. The question is, do they surprise everyone and, you know, double, triple, quadruple revenue over the next year? Elon's talking about 50xing revenue. If that happens, one could argue SpaceX is cheap. I mean, if Elon does $1 trillion in revenue and it's trading at $3 trillion right now, that's 3 times sales. It's not that crazy. But the probability on that happening is obviously coming into question. Qualcomm right there, up 3.7%. Is that Netflix? Did we lose 80? Did we actually lose 80? Netflix, wow, loses 80. By the way, Netflix tried to buy Roku. Semaphore reported Netflix has lost the bidding war for Roku against Fox. They were among the media companies interested in also acquiring Lionsgate Studios, but has not yet submitted a formal letter. This is why I don't like Netflix right now. They tried to buy Warner Brothers, couldn't do it. They tried to buy Roku, couldn't do it. They're now trying to buy Lionsgate Studio. Like, it just feels like the only way they think they can grow is by acquiring media companies, because they don't have any good content. Like, they don't have the Squid Games of 2026 that's getting millions of subscribers here. So, like, what's the growth story to be excited about on Netflix? Like, it's actually kind of, I mean, if they were willing to buy Roku to increase their ads business, it means their content's not bringing in new people. And that part, I think, is kind of scary. Lionsgate right there up 6% on Netflix, potentially acquiring them here. What about the other space names? Are they still down? Lunar down 8%. ASTS down 3%. Rocket Lab down 5% as SpaceX gets hit at 225. There's that red candle right there, 225 to 219. But still holding 200. We did have housing starts today. Those were a little better than expected. Let's get some coverage right here on SpaceX. We'll get the exact numbers. But this is what you've got as SpaceX has overtaken Microsoft.
In 2025, I mean, you can look across the globe. Europe raised $17.3 billion in terms of IPO proceeds in 2025. So tiny compared to the US at $50 billion. And this was before we got the mega IPOs like SpaceX coming this year. APAC was the winner last year because of Hong Kong, had a lot of IPOs, 90 billion. But guess what? SpaceX alone this year has surpassed all of what Asia Pacific raised in IPO proceeds for all of 2025. So this is the story of right, an American innovation right now and how much capital is chasing that. Just brings to, we have this Jensen quote. He was on a podcast with Condoleezza Rice from the Hoover Institute, former Secretary of State. And he talked about this. America provides tailwind, not headwind. You can rely on the fact that you can create something great and take it to market in a way that serves a market that has demand and that it won't be foreclosed on you randomly, arbitrarily, unknowingly, unpredictably. These things that American entrepreneurs rely on are alive and well here. NVIDIA genuinely is an America story. Just reminded me of that.
It is a moment as well, though, to remind people as we see sort of the back and forth here, but basically the approximate value of SpaceX is that of Microsoft. That this is a company, SpaceX, that lost money last year, that is spending enormously on the build out it needs to do in terms of compute and so many other things around AI, not to mention launch cadence, getting the Starship up and running, and then the hopes for data centers in space. Now, they have added a lot of revenue very recently with those deals to sell compute to both Anthropic and Alphabet. But that said, Sarah, we're still talking about multiples to revenues on this year's numbers and earnings, if they have them next year, that are staggering, to say the least. And you're certainly going to have a chorus of people who say this is crazy. But the proponents will come back to Elon Musk and his hopes and dreams, and even his tweet over the weekend, or excuse me, his post over the weekend on X about $1 trillion in revenues.
And his ability to do the once thought impossible with things like SpaceX, right, and making it happen. Just to put it in perspective, the way the market is valuing SpaceX right now would make it the 8th largest economy in the world. I think it just overtook Italy. Has a little bit of it has to get to $3.5 trillion to catch up with France, but just in terms of the size, you know, the G7 leaders are all gathering right now. And I mean, look at where SpaceX is now, bigger than Italy, Russia, Brazil, and Canada. Those are like under $3 trillion economies. It's pretty crazy.
By the way, there was one group that was probably rooting against the IPO performance of SpaceX, and that's the people behind Cursor. SpaceX has agreed to purchase Cursor. Remember, this was a strong possibility. They have moved forward with that transaction. And they also talk about the fact that SpaceX AI has been jointly training a model with Cursor, will be released in Cursor and Grok build soon. But the deal itself, $60 billion, one of the larger deals that we've seen, and it is SpaceX stock, of course. And reason I mentioned they were rooting against it is because they would have gotten more shares. In fact, they're going to potentially get fewer shares. You can see there, 210.
Okay, so these are the shares that are going to be issued based on when the Cursor deal gets, well, it looks like it's closing at 2010 for the 60 billion. So they're obviously getting less shares because of the stock price going higher.
Dollars and above, you get 285 million shares. It's all going to equal the 60 billion. This measurement period, though, won't take place until closer to the close of the transaction. In fact, 7 days prior. So we'll see how the stock is trading at that point. Not thought to be until the third quarter of this year.
So that's going to be 285 million shares of dilution then. At 210, but based on whenever the actual deal closes, which is probably in a few weeks, and they determine what the price would look like, that means SpaceX will, that is, I think, less than 0.5% of the float, of the overall float, not of the existing, like of the fully diluted value float, but that's still a decent chunk of shares that are going to be coming onto the market. So you have that happening, you have the IPO lockup, and then you have the insider lockup ending over the next couple of months. I mean, all of that obviously will bring a lot more supply of shares to the market. And the question is just going to be, you know, is the market going to be able to make sense of that? But they're obviously not diluting that here today. CoreWeave was upgraded to 167. That's correct. That's why it's getting a move right here today. I think all the NeoClouds just getting a bid. Nebius right there, 271. That is still up 4%. Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll in the chat. Who is buying Mr. SpaceX? I mean, this is just crazy to be alive to see this type of hype happen. But it also, I think, proves how much people want to invest in Elon. Are you buying SpaceX? And how much excitement, his companies end up generating. Rocket Lab still down 5. Carter Libre up 2. Tesla was a good short in certain moments, like 2021 top, but a lot of times it ended up really burning the shorts. And so as much as people want to short SpaceX, it might be certain moments where you can short it, but I wonder if it can actually hold. There you go, 225 to 214. If you bought at 225, dude, you're pissed, right? Like $10 drop in less than 5 minutes, which is 130 billion market cap swing. So that's the scale of just how quickly this is moving up and down for this type of momentum. Mitt, what are you doing with SpaceX? I am just looking at it, watching it. I'm doing the same thing many of you guys do. I'm just staring at it and enjoying the show. There's not much to do, dude. I can't sleep at night having something this volatile in my portfolio without having a fundamental basis to own it. I just can't. Maybe if I bought it at 150 on the IPO day, then I would be like, you know what? It's probably not getting back to those levels. But at 215, like it's hard. But also, like, there's just a lot of opportunities that are out there. I don't like the SpaceX we're focused on because it's exciting and it's fun and it's Elon's new company. But there are so many names that are out there, so many different opportunities to look at, so many names that are still being disrespected by the market. SpaceX will get a lot of the attention, but it's not the only opportunity willing to trade. It's just the most volatile one that's out there. Figma, been trying to do more due diligence on this. This one just keeps getting hit. I mean, Claude's model's not going to be replacing them, so I don't know why it's getting hit, but a lot of the software names getting wrecked. Cerebras was at 250 last week. 250. Pumped from 199 to 250, now back to 208. I mean, just so many of these names, as soon as the hype dies down or the momentum dies down, the stock gets hit. Intel right here, 125. Is that one's getting down. The reason Amcor is up is because of a new 10-year agreement with TSMC Arizona. So that deserves to be up 11% right there. Again, it's only a $23 billion company. Amcor trades at 3 times sales. Margins aren't the best, but the volume of growth in packaging is gigantic. And so those types of deals actually make a lot of sense for Amcor to get. Marvell, again, you had an insider sell some of their stock. Wow. Ooh, well, the CFO's selling $60 million worth of stock yesterday. The market bought it up, 315. He sold at 290. He is leaving, so that's part of the reason he sold. That is crazy, dude. 314.70. And he got out at 290. I mean, the amount of demand that there is out there, you just tip your hat and say, all right. And the S&P is flat today, so it's not even the market pumping here. It's these individual names. Redwire. Oh, man, wow. Redwire, dude. That's an ugly dump today, 10%. I know they've been diluting. Maybe they're tapping the ATM a little bit. Okay, Broadcom is becoming more and more of a buy, in my opinion. I think it makes sense. I have not bought it yet. The multiple is incredibly reasonable if you assume their 2028 trajectory of growth. It's just, is Broadcom a trap like NVIDIA in terms of it makes sense fundamentally, multiple is great, but it's not going to move. This is the thing about this market, right? Like someone had a tweet yesterday that I thought was so hilarious. They're like, this market is rewarding the people that are, well, the way they framed it was, they basically said, if you're an idiot, this market is rewarding you, right? Like implying that, look, the types of people that are buying the types of stocks that are moving at certain levels and ignoring the fundamentals around a Meta or a Broadcom, NVIDIA, those are the ones that are winning, SanDisk up 700%. Okay, it has another 1,000% to go. And it literally went up another 1,000%. Like, you just don't care. Now, I don't think you're an idiot if you buy the memory names or anything. Obviously, it's just a term of art in terms of like buying parabolic charts, buying companies that are trading at 400 times earnings. It doesn't matter because that's how this market has rewarded you. But the reason it's not a bubble is because those companies could go down and the fundamentals of the most important companies in the world can still be rational, which means you can't say the whole market collapses, even if, Marvell drops back to 200, which would be an ugly collapse for Marvell, but it wouldn't take down the whole market. And as a result, if it doesn't collapse, you get rewarded. You get rewarded aggressively. It's like the classic saying, everyone's a genius in a bull market. Yeah, I mean, look, with many of these names pumping the way they're pumping, you tend to look like a genius buying it if it just goes up, and sometimes it flips really quickly. Like Rocket Lab, dude, 150 to 104. That is an ugly drawdown. Now, for the people that have bought Rocket Lab since 20 or 30, that's the volatility you have to be used to. That's whatever, it happens. But for the people that bought at 145, like that's a really ugly drawdown. And it was working until it didn't work. So like it was rewarding you buying something this aggressively priced, even after the company diluted by $3 billion, until it didn't. And that's, I think, the fear where it could happen to a lot more companies. Oh, we got a red candle on the Qs. Do we have some news? Or is this the 1030 slam? Wow, quant data. Tesla and SpaceX have accounted for 15% of all options volume so far today. That is crazy, bro. Tesla and SpaceX accounted for 15% of all options volume so far today, and it's only been 40 minutes. I imagine by the end of the day, it's even going to be higher. SpaceX is at 450,000 contracts traded. Tesla, 600,000 contracts that have been traded. Don't see a headline for the red candle, but you are seeing it's affecting SpaceX as well. 213 now. ASTS still getting hit, as that is also going down. At some point, do you think money will flow back into Rocket Lab after profit taking in SpaceX? I don't know, dude. I mean, theoretically, yeah, that makes sense. But I also think that money would just go back into SpaceX and ride it up again, right? That's why it's hard to make a long-term bet on this right now. You've only had a couple of days of price action. It's really hard to sell options on this because you have no idea where it's going to go. And you have no idea if this tops out the space sector or if this is just the beginning of the rotation in space in general. Where's NVIDIA? Are we at 210? Wow. I haven't looked at NVIDIA in the past 20 minutes. I did not know that we lost 209. Goodness, dude. Okay, so NVIDIA and Broadcom basically trading together. Robinhood goes red. Again, Robinhood, as much as I wanted to see triple digits, the only thing I'm concerned about is that Q2 will have good results. It will not have phenomenal results. And then Q3, if we get any dull period in the summer, is going to go back to having, 15, 20% growth, which is just not enough if it ends up holding 120, 130 and makes that way. And if you're buying it at 100, your target's got to be at least 120, 130. I mean, your target's not going to be 103, right? So you would imagine at least 20, 30% from these levels if you're buying it here. And that's my only fear. In fact, the layoff news today, although I think it's bullish, I think it's part of management saying, hey, like to hit our numbers, we need to downsize, which means maybe growth is good, but growth is not so good to the point where we're going to beat on EPS dramatically, which is what they need to do at this multiple. They beat on EPS last quarter by 1 cent and the stock fell 20%. Like it's just not enough, right? Tesla goes red as well, 404. That is my only kind of hesitation with Hood. And that's why I think it keeps getting rejected at 100 every time it makes the move. SoFi 17. I'm happy SoFi's at least holding 17. Maybe that rate cut narrative is bullish for the entire fintech sector. Netflix. I mean, does anyone think I'm fundamentally wrong on Netflix? If they're trying to buy Roku, if they're trying to buy Lionsgate, if they failed at buying Warner Brothers, how is this not signaling to the market, we don't know how to grow anymore? We need inorganic growth. Broadcom potentially below 380 right now. And we have to spend a lot of money or go into a lot of debt to buy out content because we can't produce original enough content to grow the company. Like, I feel like that's kind of obvious. That's what Netflix is telling you. And so it's just like, why do you buy into that? Just like Nike, right? If their brand is kind of dying and the earnings are not growing and multiple is not cheap. Now, Netflix is the cheapest it's been historically. So I'll give Netflix that. Nike is still trading at 30 times earnings, when Meta is trading at 15 times. But I think both of them are kind of just hard to get excited about. Having said that, if you bought Netflix at this time a few months ago, you did well. It completely rebounded, got up to 120. So, I mean, like, nibbling here, like selling puts on Netflix here feels a little bit more appropriate. Because, like, if you get assigned at 75, you're like, okay, whatever. You know, I don't think this thing is going to 50. But it's a little tougher with some of the names that are super, super high beta. Market's not reflecting their ads business. SMCI is also getting hammered. That's correct. So is Netflix a sell in your opinion? I mean, if you bought it at 85, I don't think it's a sell at 78. I think most people's average, though, is around this range. Like if you bought the somewhat bottom a couple months ago, then your average has got to be around 75 to 80. It never went below 70. But, you know, if you bought it at 110, I mean, you know, at this point, you either decide to cut your losses or be a bag holder. I just don't know if it's a buy here. But I don't want to get bearish on it because this is where it pumped last time. So I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Definitely doesn't make sense to go short here. Maybe the worst is priced in. But from a growth perspective, is it the most exciting? DRAM, that's down 1%. Nokia, that's down 5% as well. I don't see headlines, folks, for the red candles. We just got a 6 million put spike on the Qs, though. I mean, honestly, the headline might just be that SpaceX pumped, and the headline might be that SpaceX overtook Microsoft's valuation. This is what I'm saying, right? Is at 225. Let's say you sold puts at 205. Stock's at 208 now. I mean, you're about to be assigned on those puts. Like you just like it's so, or maybe you sold puts at 200. Maybe you sold puts at 197. I mean, this thing is not that far away. If it fell $14 in less than 12 minutes, it could do that again to the downside. It could also go up to the downside. But like, you just have to be okay with getting assigned the shares. And if you're not, which most people probably are not, especially when they actually have to get assigned, then the premiums might not be worth it. AMD losing 530. Palantir, dude, we got to hold 125. We have been flirting with below 130 aggressively over the past couple weeks. The Fed meeting tomorrow, that's the reason. Yeah, I think that's fair. Oil still at 77.82. I think Kevin Warsh is going to either be super hawkish or super dovish. I don't think he's going to give us a middle ground. And if he does, then honestly, if he does, he's going to be the same as Jay Powell. And it's going to be pretty annoying every time listening to him. Like the one thing I want him to be different on is giving us clear and concise answers and not being overtly trying to play both sides, which I think he's not trying to do. I think he wants to give the market more clarity in a reasonable way without having to give forward guidance. But then again, he's the Fed chair. I don't know if he's even allowed to really do that. SpaceX now 209 as that's going red. Is Iran still green? Iran just flipped red. Bitcoin just went down again. Walmart is your safety today as that one's green. If SpaceX is down 10% from the highs, what is that market cap swing? That's about 130 billion. Well, no. That's sorry. That is 265 billion. So yesterday it added 415 billion because it was up 20% of the day. So it's, you know, you're basically talking about every 10, 12% is 220 billion up and down, which is also why the volatility is so crazy, because even Nvidia doesn't have that type of a move, or, you know, maybe it used to years ago, but that's when it was growing, not just when it went public. Nvidia 209, AMD trying to get back up to 530. Is there a schedule for earnings for SpaceX? It's in 80 days, so about 2 months. But the shares start to open up basically around the same time. And by December, they're pretty much all opened up. Vance just posted about Iran. Here is what he said just now.
Talk a little bit about what is in the Iran deal, the great peace deal that the President of the United States made last night. Number one, what this deal means is that the Straits of Hormuz are open immediately. You're already seeing oil and gas prices come down just over the past 24 hours. Number two, it ensures that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And we have to back up for a second and appreciate that what the president has done is completely decimated Iran's nuclear program. Now, this deal really has two pathways. On the one hand, if the Iranians make the long-term commitments never to rebuild, then they're going to be welcomed into the world economy. If, on the other hand, they try to rebuild that nuclear program, they're never going to have the resources in order to do so. So it's a win-win for the American people. We ensure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon either way. And now it's really up to the Iranians. Over the next few months, we're going to see if they're serious about dismantling that program for the long term. If they do, the president has said, we want their country to be successful. But what we know is that our country is successful thanks to great presidential leadership and a lot of good decisions. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so once again, that sounded like a performance-based deal rooted in obligations and concessions that need to happen in order for the US and Iran to actually agree on something. So I think we're going to get the full text of the MOU tomorrow. And once we get that text, it should be a little bit more obvious in terms of what exactly is happening here. But as long as it keeps oil down, and oil is well below 80 today, that's all the market cares about, I think. Unless the market starts caring about, the details of it. But I think they would only care about that if the Strait of Hormuz opens up. If they don't care about that, we might be okay. Brian Armstrong, he's live right now. Let's listen to him.
That's for people all over the world, 24/7 trading. You can even very easily send it to your friends and family as a gift. And so I'm really excited to get tokenized equities live because it's really just going to create demand. And the 4 billion people all over the world that are unbrokered are going to have access to high quality US investments.
Yeah, I think you just touched on this, but to ask the very basic question, what is going to pull investors towards this instead of more traditional stocks traded in a more traditional way?
Yeah, well, we offer that in the US as well, like more traditional stock trading and options trading and all kinds of things. But you have to remember, there's lots of people in the world who actually don't have easy access to US stocks. A lot of countries, like if you're a wealthy person, you might be able to get a US account, a brokerage account opened or something, like if you're a very wealthy person in Argentina. But like 4 billion people in the world don't have any way to access US investments. Like NVIDIA or Coinbase stock or anything like that. So they're stuck holding cash and low quality investments. So it's very important for financial freedom that everybody in the world can access high quality investments, and it will just create more demand for high quality US company stocks.
Yeah, and so at least to start outside of the US, I mean, another market that you're spearheading that is largely outside of the US is perpetual futures. Big case study for pre-IPO perps last week with SpaceX. What can you share about that? What was the uptake, and how does it set you up for more of these types of contracts?
Yeah, well, we're living in this golden age where some of the largest private companies in the world are finally going public. And in some ways, that's incredible. But it would be amazing if retail could get exposure earlier when they're still private, right? Because a lot of the value upside has already been captured by accredited investors, which of course is like only wealthy people can invest in these private companies. So we wanted to try to, again, democratize access, and pre-IPO perps is a way for anyone in the markets where it's available outside the US at the moment to get exposure to these companies, the largest companies in the world that are coming private.
Okay, the red candles are heating up, folks. I do not have a headline for you. I really don't, but SpaceX 225 to 207. That is getting demolished right here. Palantir is still trying to hold on to 130. NVIDIA 209. If we see NVIDIA lose 208.55, we're going to be down. SPY as well. I mean, this kind of looked like it wanted to go red because of the lack of movement when SpaceX was pumping as the market opened. 752 right there. SpaceX now below 207. Huh. Yeah, maybe it's Warsh volatility. Maybe it's Warsh volatility right here. There was $1 billion traded in the levered ETFs yesterday as well on SpaceX. So massive volume with the levered ETFs as, the 2x short, 2x long. And then they attracted $1 billion of value. I mean, that's a lot of aggression from people that are short. SpaceX 205. Are we going below 200? Are we round tripping this that quickly? I mean, it would be quite incredible if that ends up playing out that way, obviously you might just have a ton of buyers step in and try to hold on to this thing. BMNR, that's getting hit. Oil down enough today. Ended up feeling like it was a sell the news as ETH 1766. That's down. ELF is at least going higher. That one's making a bigger move right there. NVIDIA 208. There it is. NVIDIA loses intraday lows. 10:30. Such an interesting time in the markets, dude. Every day. I feel like we all get closer at 10:30. We all learn more about our personalities at 10:30 every day. There you go. Continues to get hit. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely red. SMCI, that's down 5. Palantir down 3. Software getting hit. Visa and MasterCard holding up a little bit. When's the next stock draft? So next stock draft is on Monday. So it officially ended yesterday. I ended up winning it. So it's officially done. I will get the first pick in the draft. I ended out with 75%. Steve was at 60. Matt was at 55. Tanner was at 12. And then Chris was at 43. So on Steve's channel on Saturday, we'll have the next stock draft. And yeah, I'll get the first pick and we'll see which one we pick. But honestly, it would be nice for the stock draft if the market tanks because we'll all get to pick stocks at way better prices. But we got to see what happens on Saturday. Micron, that hit 1,100 pre-market, 1,060. That's down 3. AMD is down. Amid, have you talked about summer market action? Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. June and July are horrible for the market. They suck. They're not fun months for the stock market historically. Last year was a bit different because we already had the April lows from the tariffs, so it kind of erased the need for a summer sell-off. This year, you could kind of say the same thing, although the lows we had this time in March were not as bad as the lows in April. So I wonder if the summer is able to withstand it. Also, it's a midterm year. That general volatility has yet to be avoided in the summer up until October. Like historically, since 1950, we bottom in October in a midterm year. And it's happened many, many times. The question is, does it happen again? And is there a reason for it to happen with all the earnings growth, with oil coming down, with rate cut expectations? I mean, one could say no, but then, you see SpaceX and how it trades, and one could say there's too much excitement. So I don't know. We're going to have to see. And then you're going to pick SpaceX for the stock draft first choice. It goes up. So why not? It goes up. No, in all seriousness, I'll just tell you guys right now, I'm picking NVIDIA. Like, I feel like I have to. Like, I don't know how I can be bullish on 2027 without picking NVIDIA. Like, if NVIDIA doesn't perform next year, the whole market's going to shit. I mean, maybe Walmart and Verizon will be your winners. But if you're bullish AI, you're bullish CapEx at these multiples, I think NVIDIA's got to be the obvious first pick here. So that's still my bet. This thing should be closer to $250 stock right now. It's at 209 for a variety of reasons, but I think it will go higher. S&P 752 as that's down. Is real money involved? No, it's all just based on equal weighted versions of what the price action would look like. And by the way, anyone in the chat can participate. Just pick your own 10 stocks. It doesn't have to be rooted in the draft. And then just compare your 10, even if you have similar stocks to whatever we pick. So it's not literally the same as in the draft, but if I take NVIDIA and someone else takes NVIDIA, that's fine. But the 6 of us will actually be competing for it. SPY 753, a little bit of green right there. Can you take SMH? Yeah, I think we could pick ETFs. Which honestly, SMH is not a horrible option. SMH down 1.4% right here. It's just, again, it's up a lot. There's going to be 12 stocks because we have Jason, so we need to have 6 rounds. So it'll be 12 stocks, not 10. Where's Adobe here? Is that still getting hit? Adobe 208. That is still getting hit. No headline still. Yeah, no head. Wow, SpaceX 204. Oh boy. She's getting hit. Dude, 225 to 204. That's just imagine the people buying it at 225 thinking it's going to 230, and then it just doesn't. Like, this is why sometimes you just got to step back and be like, all right, whatever happens, happens, because you don't want to be that person. And it might come back to 225 just as quick as it went down, but like, you know, your heart starts racing. Like, you got to control your blood pressure, right? Like, this is it's just aggressive. Walmart 122. Yeah, but that's such short-term thinking. Well, the person who bought it at 225, I really doubt they had a long-term perspective on space. And they could say they did. But if you really ask them, are you in this for the long term? I think they would admit, no, dude, I thought it was going to 230. That's why I bought it at 2. You know, like, I've been in that situation, right? You become a community member pretty quickly, but not on something this expensive, dude. AMD 528, still holding 500s. That continues to go down. Trying to see if I can find anything, but I think it's just algos before Warsh, to be honest. I don't see any Lebanon headlines stuff outside of the JD Vance thing. Coinbase CEO didn't say anything too crazy. Oil still below 70. You know, a lot of times the stuff that you think is going to happen is not happening. And so oil below 70, you would think markets pump, and the opposite's happening, which is just typical markets, right? So maybe that's also part of what's happening right here. I worry Trump will say something this week in G7 that's bad. So he had a meeting today with, let me pull up. They were doing this in the pre-market. Oh, wow. Yum Foods is selling Pizza Hut for $2.7 billion. Wow. Oh, my. Private equity and private credit catching up to the pizza. Okay. So Yum Brands selling Pizza Hut for $2.7 billion. That just came out. Then you had Paul Atkins right here. Let's take a look at what he was saying. He was live a couple minutes ago. And then we'll keep going from there.
Part of our whole drive here at the SEC under my leadership over the last 14 months has been to make IPOs great again. And so we've had a big bang, but the real story is
make IPOs great again. Oh boy, are they trying to pump this up? The SEC chair saying my agenda is to make IPOs great again. Yeah, they are absolutely going to try to pump up Anthropic and OpenAI as those go public.
the other ones that are in the pipeline and how we need to make our markets more predictable and attractive and practical for companies to go public.
That doesn't mean that companies are saying we got to do it while Atkins is chairman. Is there a push to do it while it might be a more fertile time? Because it's not because of you.
No, it's right. I mean, the tone has changed, obviously, and tone means a lot in the marketplace, as you know, market sentiment. But we're looking at the long term. We had our new corporation finance director compares it to this old house where, you know, we're out to scrape away the layers of paint on the banister and the doors that don't work and whatnot to make it go back down to the wood, put the primer on, and then the finishing coat to really make our whole system more practical, less complicated, less expensive, and to draw people out from in the private markets into the public market.
I mean, we've talked about it all the time, how much longer companies stay private. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Sure.
Obviously, but do you think some of them were what you've just been talking about?
Absolutely.
And if the public isn't, I saw an ad that was just running on CNBC about the first time the normal people can ever get in on any of these things. They have stayed private much longer, and the valuation gets to much higher levels. So the average person
Missed a lot of the run.
doesn't get any of that.
Well, when I started out as a young lawyer up here in New York doing IPOs back in the mid 80s, a big IPO would be what's a B or maybe C round in the private equity side these days. So, we have now half the number of public companies as we had 30 years ago. And so my whole goal is to increase the number, to get it so that, that there is a good balance between the private and public market.
What do you?
I mean, look, obviously we need IPOs to be successful, but man, they are telling you right here, essentially to buy the IPOs because the government's going to try to make sure they end up playing out. Here's what Trump said earlier today at G7.
And it's an honor to be with you. And we just signed a deal with Iran. And this country was a very powerful ally. And good things are happening. The ships are starting to move now. We're going to have it fully open by Friday. The ships are starting to move nicely. Oil is starting to go, and the prices are coming down rapidly. Stock market is going up rapidly. A lot of good things are happening. And most importantly, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. That was how I got involved in this.
So once again, Trump reminding everybody, oil's down, market's up. That's it. Keel getting a 6% move right there. Adobe up 1.3%. SpaceX chilling out at 207 right here. I feel like it's got to make a decision. Either you want to go below 200 or back to 220. But it is staying right there. Yes, he did not mention the Dow this time. Just mentioned the stock market. Palantir barely holding 130. CoreWeave, nice little move right there. Got recovered pretty quickly off 115. Now almost back at 118. Got Bloom Energy. Wow. This was at 250 last week. 296 right there. It is a weird day, though. A lot of your high beta names are red, and then a lot of them are also green. But it's not all of them red or all of them green. The Max 7s are still green. The Q's still pretty red. Rocket Lab trying to break through. Amcor again, really good announcement today. That one would not surprise me if it can push higher. Volume is only 5 million too, so it's a lot of buying pressure, a small amount of volume, but 12% move. Google, we were at 367. We are now at 373. Okay, so Google continues to separate themselves out of all the Max 7s. Microsoft's down, Meta's down, Amazon is barely up. NVIDIA once again hit, Tesla hit, SpaceX at 206 again. Apple's up $1. It's really Google today making some of these moves. Ondas, is that down? Ondas back to 9. Yeah, the drone stuff caught a bid once Trump said he was investing in the drones. And then it kind of fizzled out again in terms of excitement. Where is the VIX? The VIX is 16. So it's down 1%. Fear and greed, let's check that. We are at 41 on fear. Could you imagine we get to extreme fear and SpaceX is trading at 200? I don't know, like what happens when we get to extreme greed? Like we really haven't hit extreme greed at any point this year. I think we hit it once in January for a very small time. Did we find out why NVIDIA raised $20 billion in cash? On their SEC filing, they said for general corporate purposes. I think if you read between the lines, to get the market to be warmed up to any of the large cap companies raising money. Essentially, I think Jensen's trying to tell the market, hey, if we're doing it, then you can't be mad if Microsoft's doing it because we're the best company in the world. And even we want to lever up our balance sheet, which I think is actually a smart thing to do. But it doesn't seem like they actually need the money for anything important because, they have plenty of money. Palantir losing it. SMCI really losing it. Netflix continues to get hit badly. Need to pay for Jensen's travel bills. Dude, I wonder how much Jensen's security costs every year. It's gotta be up there. It's gotta be in the millions for security. There's no way it's not. Broadcom 383. Marvell, this was at 317, bro. These dramatic moves is just, I mean, literally the only way to compensate for them is to buy it and not look at it or not care about it. But it's tough to not care about it if you're telling yourself you're long and it goes up so much in a day because you get excited, or it goes down so much within the same day and you get annoyed. Just pretty volatile when navigating it. Do you think 225 will be SpaceX's 52-week high? That's a good question. What do you guys think? Was 225.64 the top this year for SpaceX? You want to say no because it can just easily pump and get back there, right? Like you want to say like it could get back there in a couple minutes. But then you also wonder, just like, well, it needs from here $195 billion of pressure, to move up there. And maybe that doesn't happen. Kathy is up a lot. Kathy bought $400 million worth of it on IPO day. I don't know what her average is, but she bought like 3.2 million shares. So, I mean, a lot of people gave her shit for buying it on the IPO day. Now, granted, she bought Cerebras as well, and that one got destroyed. But so far, she's up a decent chunk, 50% for now on those SpaceX shares. There was another crazy stat I heard yesterday. It was based on SpaceX's multiple, and if you gave that to like, if you gave it to like Tesla, see if I can find it. The multiple becomes a bit up there. It was like in the quadrillions of market cap. But yeah, I mean, essentially, that multiple is not fully there yet. So this is the other stat that most people have been saying as the options continue to make this more volatile. With a market cap of 2.8 trillion, SpaceX just passed Amazon, fifth largest company. Amazon did 743 billion and 91 billion in net income. SpaceX did 19 billion in sales, and they lost 9 billion in profits. But nonetheless, it continues. Intel's getting hit. That is correct. Intel going down. Tesla also still going down. Amcor really having the best day, I would say, in the semis. Intel 120. Intel was 134 yesterday. See, a lot of these names, they continue to hold a high multiple, but they're not really breaking their all-time highs like they were back in May. And that's obviously in May, they were much cheaper. Intel was like 60, 50 bucks. So every time Intel gets to 130, it gets rejected. CoreWeave, let's see, at 125-ish, does it continue to get rejected? NVIDIA, all it knows how to do is get rejected at 210, 215. But they're not collapsing. Like Intel's not below 100. It was last week for a second, but then it spiked up. Is that your Palantir headline? Germany's military said it will no longer use Palantir. When was Germany's military even using Palantir in the first place? We know that. This is an old headline. This came out a few months ago. I see what you're talking about. We know that the Bavarian State Police have a prototype with Palantir, but yeah, the Germany's armed forces are not going to be awarding contracts to Palantir anytime soon. Not in this political environment. The new one is France. Is there a headline on France today? France Palantir. Oh, yeah, there it is. That's probably why Palantir's down. French domestic spy agency ditches Palantir for local rival. France's agency DGSI will replace tools from U.S. tech firm Palantir in favor of a French viral called Chaps Vision, the French Prime Minister office said on Tuesday. Chaps Vision. AI solutions for businesses and governments. Okay, Chaps Vision just took Palantir's lunch for the DGSI. This is their website. I mean, what can you do, man? Either France is going to get value out of this and never use Palantir, or they're going to eventually come back to Palantir and say, yeah, that was trash. But I mean, Palantir can't do anything about it. In this political environment, they're going to have to let the customer come to the realization themselves if they're needed or not. Palantir 129. Yeah, it's probably, I mean, software's down today, but that headline probably affecting them a bit. Chaps Vision, bro. What type of name is that? Chaps Vision. All right. There you go. There you go. SpaceX 205 to 212. I feel like you could stare at this chart all day and be entertained. I mean, goodness, dude. Yeah, Chaps is like a fellow, right? Bloom Energy. Now Palantir does have other contracts with the France government and different extensions that they've had. This specific agency might be replacing them with someone else, whereas other elements of the agency is not fully. Yeah, because Palantir has had this contract with the France domestic agency and intelligence agency has existed for a while. I mean, I remember covering it a couple years ago. So I don't know if they're fully replacing every part of it here. In the Reuters article, Palantir said its long-term contract with the DGSI, which was renewed at the end of 2025 for several more years, remains fully in force. The office clarified that Palantir's tool would be continued to be used until Chaps Vision could be entered. Wow. The French government clarified that Palantir's tools would continue to be used until Chaps Visions could be integrated to avoid a capability gap. Okay, so as long as Chaps Vision doesn't overtake the capabilities of Palantir, because they do, that's what I thought. I remember at the end of 2025, this was one of the larger contracts they got internationally. That's part of the reason the Q1 earnings were decent at least on the international side. I mean, if they want to try to make it better than Palantir, they have every right to try. It's just, if it doesn't work out, I would imagine they end up using what matters. Amazon, are we still down? We are slightly up, 247. What's up with Broadcom? Dude, I think this ultimately becomes accumulation now. Remember, Broadcom was a slow mover before it pumped to 490. This thing got to 420 in December, got hit on the earnings, and then basically stayed around really 310 to 330. I mean, it took a lot in March for it to break above 350, then it fell all the way back down to 290, and then it finally broke out before earnings. I just think on a lot of hype and excitement. So this might be a long waiting period with Broadcom. I mean, I don't think this one easily moves back up to 430, 440. If you've looked at its chart back in March and April. I mean, it was one of the slowest semiconductor moves. I mean, the real semis that moved were Amkor, Micron, Intel, SanDisk, and Western Digital. I guess we'll throw Marvell in there now after the ceasefire. Broadcom made a move, but it wasn't a crazy move. NVIDIA made a move, but again, wasn't a crazy move. The Max 7s made somewhat of a move. SpaceX 213 back down to 208. But Broadcom's cheap. So once again, do you buy cheap and hold on and just let it play out? Or do you buy volatile, expensive, riskier names, but you get a lot more movement? We have TT today. Yes, we should have TT with Jason later today. Do you think Microsoft is dead, down 16% year to date, makes zero sense? It is as if the market just gave up on one of the largest companies in the world. So the two reasons I think Microsoft are down is, one, it's still a big component of IGV. And I think you got to remember IGV being down, takes down Palantir, ServiceNow, Adobe, Microsoft. We saw it flip 2 weeks ago super quickly. Microsoft went to 470. IGV was almost at 110. Like, that flip can happen realistically overnight. But I think that's part of the reason it's down. And the second reason, once again, is I think the street feels there's going to be more dilution from Microsoft. Given Google got away with it, why wouldn't Microsoft try to do it? Dude, honestly, Microsoft, when it was at 470, they should have issued some equity and just got it over with. But it only lasted for a day, so maybe they didn't even have time to think about it. But those two fears, I think, are what's hurting Microsoft. And the other sort of broader macro fear with Microsoft, honestly, is, remember, Microsoft stayed flat for 14 years. Under Steve Ballmer, Microsoft did nothing for 14 years, basically 2000 to 2014, until Nadella came in 2015, bought LinkedIn in 2016, and then really started scaling Azure. You didn't see the stock move. And I think there is a little bit of a stench on Microsoft, which is that it has been one of those names that has been able to not do anything for a long time. And so people kind of wonder, if there's any broader bear case around it, could that happen again? Now, look, in this AI revolution, with Microsoft being one of the most important companies in the world, their stake in OpenAI, Azure, I think that's a bad bear case. But it does exist in terms of the lack of volatility on this. I mean, even in 2023, it barely moved, right? It really took last year for Microsoft to finally make a move. 2023, every Mac 7 was moving. Microsoft was one of the only ones that didn't. Having said that, valuation's amazing, and it's a phenomenal company. It's just this year, in 2026, the market doesn't care about any of that stuff. I mean, if they did, SpaceX would not be at almost $3 trillion. Like, Microsoft would be at minimum $5 trillion. NVIDIA would probably be closer to at least $6 trillion. So it taking a dump. It is getting dumped right there, 95.32. That's down 2%. It did make Ballmer rich. That's fair. Ballmer had a lot of stock and got paid really well. It's just shareholders didn't really participate during that time. It is kind of crazy when I look at some of those charts and I see the stocks that were dead, or even the index that were dead for like a decade, or not even a decade, 5-7 years. You try to think in this market environment, could retail hold on to a dead stock for 5 months? Forget 5, for 5 months. Like if you bought Microsoft today at $390, could you stomach it in 2030 being at $390? Because from 2000 to 2008, 2008 to 2015, a lot of those names, you did have to stomach them just not moving. Obviously, we're in a whole different environment right now. S&P lows of day. But I wonder if that could be the case. Do you think Microsoft's a sell then? No, absolutely not. I think Microsoft's only a sell if you have a better place to put the money in. And then so that begs the question, is there a better place to put in the money? It's like, well, when you look at the fundamentals, I mean, sure, there might be some out there, but like I would put Microsoft up there in the top 10. So no, I don't. Unless you think like, CoreWeave has more volatility than Microsoft. CoreWeave could pump probably quicker than Microsoft. So if you're purely focused on that, then sure. But if you're okay with holding on to something long, then no, Microsoft's not a sell. Meta's not a sell. None of these names are sells. It's just the market is gaslighting us by making us think that we need to buy SpaceX over companies that have real fundamentals and real cash flows. And you either fall into the trap or you don't. And that trap could be very lucrative, but it is mentally very taxing as well. Uber's moving up. Is Uber making a move? A little bit right here, 1.2. Again, Uber's been dead majority of the year as well. What about selling Microsoft for Micron? Look, I don't necessarily hate that, given I do think Micron's cheap and it can make a move. But once again, like, do you buy that parabolic chart? Just like everyone thought the space names, including myself, I thought Rocket Lab and ASTS and Lunar and all those names would get a higher bid going into the SpaceX IPO. They did the exact opposite. Everyone's thinking Micron's going to have the best earnings in the world and best earnings in history, which they probably will. What happens if the stock doesn't go up? What happens if it's priced in? What happens if the market's just like, cool, but we already gave you $1 trillion market cap. Sorry, a $1.2 trillion market. What if that happens? And if that does happen, it's like, okay, was it worth taking the risk on that? Just like, was it worth taking the risk on Rocket Lab at 130, assuming SpaceX would pump it when it completely did the opposite? I don't know. But I understand the pain of holding something that's just not making a bigger move. Senate Majority Leader Thune says he has asked the Trump administration for the text of the Iran MOU as well as a briefing. He says he received nothing yet. Nothing yet. Okay. So that MOU briefing is going to have to come out pretty soon. Iran's top negotiator in call with Lebanon's parliament speaker says Israel must withdraw from the occupied areas in Lebanon. People of southern Lebanon must return to their homes. The war must end on all fronts, including Lebanon. Okay, this could be another bear case. What if Iran tomorrow says if Israel doesn't leave Lebanon, we're not going to go to Switzerland and sign the MOU? I mean, maybe that's also part of the reason markets are a little weary. Because remember, this happened 2 weeks ago. We had a deal. Axios reported it Sunday. Futures pumped. Israel hit Lebanon Monday morning. And then boom, it was like early Monday morning before the markets were really open for pre-market action. And then boom, the entire deal kind of fell apart for 2 weeks. Then Trump said we're going to get Karg Island. Then he reversed the same day. And now I wonder if Iran holds up again based on this idea of Lebanon potentially being in play, which could create some more volatility. By the way, the Bank of Japan did raise rates last night. I think it was very expected. So I don't know if carry yen trade is that serious as a part of an issue here. Jason thinks this is profit taking ahead of the uncertainty of the Fed meeting tomorrow. I agree with Jason. I mean, 100% as Google keeps making a move. I mean, we're going to get minutes from the Fed. So, I mean, you're just going to get a lot of details from the Fed. And this is a new Fed. So the market's going to have to figure out. I mean, this is Tom Lee's entire thesis that the markets don't know how to interact with a new Fed chair. So they test him by taking the markets down and seeing how the Fed reacts. If that were to happen, SpaceX is not going to be holding $200 a share. I mean, we get a 10% drawdown. That thing's going lower. But we're going to have to see what Warsh says tomorrow. Is there a price you would buy for SpaceX? I don't know. I mean, it would have to get back at least to the 150s to even be interested. But I don't think the hype dies down for it to get there. And even if it does get there, if it's in a downtrend, you might have a lot of people saying, all right, I mean, this thing is still overvalued at 150. So I don't think there's a price. I don't think you have to be in it. There's plenty of other things to look at. But the volatility is what attracts all this attention. Did Nebius give up all their gains? Yeah, I gave up a decent chunk of it. 277 to 264. CoreWeave has not given up all of its gains. CoreWeave at least still holding 9%. And that's continuing to make a move. Lebanon reports 3 new Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon. Yeah, again, I mean, if Iran comes out and says, we're not signing shit until you figure that stuff out, I don't know. I don't know how the market's going to react to this. Oh, we got an update from Trump. Okay, this is what he said specifically about Lebanon.
War, Iran's a big one, but we have that little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah. And, I was very responsible for Syria, and the man that's running Syria now is a person that I put there along with President Erdogan and some others. He's done an amazing job of pulling it together. He's not a Boy Scout, but he's done an amazing job of pulling it together. And he is very good with Hezbollah, does not like them. And I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it.
Are you frustrated with Netanyahu, sir?
No, we had a great relationship. We're talking about some end details. I didn't like that he did an attack based on there's a very minor little thing with some drones that were released, and he ends up doing I saw that attack. I saw where that bomb went. Did you see what happened? That was a vicious, that was too much. You can do too much also. But we've had a very effective relationship. Without the United States, there would be no Israel. Without me, there would be no Israel because no other president was willing to do what I did. I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon. Lebanon used to be a great country. It was a country where you had professors, doctors, lawyers. The great intellect was in Lebanon. Now it's terrible. I would say of all countries, they've been treated the worst. And they can't defend themselves. And they have Hezbollah, which is a problem for them.
All right, so you got Trump pretty clearly stating that Netanyahu needs to cooperate in order to make this happen. And I mean, if that's the case, then I really do wonder if any additional strikes on Lebanon holds up Iran from going to Switzerland and signing this thing. I mean, that would be pretty. You would imagine that would just be horrible if, like, the scheduled signing that we've been waiting for 4 months gets canceled last minute because of a holdup. And I feel like Trump would be pretty pissed off about that as well. Q's still red on the day by about 1%. S&P also still down. Bloom up 7, AMD down 4, Adobe up 1, Qualcomm. This one's making a nice move from those lows at 192 last week, but that one potentially going red. Yeah, no other headlines outside of some of these macro things. G7 leaders called for increased support to countries with sustainable debt. G7 leaders say we will enhance efforts to address global debt vulnerabilities. The biggest companies in the world, we looked at this chart yesterday, put out $4.7 trillion of debt in 2026 so far. So just a massive, massive level of debt. This is higher than it's ever been. And it's the third straight year in a row where they've had this much. So obviously, these companies are levering up. Amazon getting a bit of a green move right there, 249. Don't see any headline on Amazon. But that is still slightly up green. Who's going to help the U.S. with their debt? Well, that's a problem for my kids. You know, they got to deal with that shit. Oh, seriously, like, who else is going to manage this? Like, it's not going to be resolved in my lifetime. Definitely not my kids' lifetime. And I don't even think their kids' I think it's going to be like my great grandkids. You're going to have to figure out how to get Bitcoin to like $2 million to pay off the debt. Like, I really am so nihilistic on the idea that our debt's going to be paid off because it's just not. This is why I was so optimistic for Doge. Like, I really thought Elon would figure it out. I was like, Elon's best friends with the president. He raised $500 million for him. Trump is basically letting him get rid of all the waste. And then, you know, Trump basically said in the big, beautiful bill, we're going to be spending more money than we ever spent. And, you know, that pissed off Elon. That led to him talking about the whole Epstein stuff. But like, if Elon couldn't get it done, there will never be a moment where the White House or an administration lets an outsider, an operator, someone like an Elon Musk come in and do the dirty work that needs to be done. Which is, it's a lot of dirty work to actually cut spending and balance the budget. I mean, the last time we balanced the budget was Bill Clinton back in 92. So I don't think anyone's going to figure it out. Chaz says it's your job, YOLO into NVIDIA options. Dude, well, here's the thing. We talked about this before, but as a country, all the like sizable amounts of capital we have in different parts of the country, Social Security being one of them, we put it into treasuries. We never put it into the markets. Multiple presidents have tried and they've always failed. And if we did, you know, the compounding effect of our markets would have led to not resolving the debt, but at least having enough where you could say maybe the debt's manageable. But Social Security is going to run out by 2033. We don't have anything that's compounding outside of Social Security. I mean, that's kind of what the Bitcoin bulls were saying. Like, maybe the US government buys 1 million Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin actually does go to the moon, that's the way we pay off the debt. But if Bitcoin goes to the moon, that means we would have inflated away our currency to such an extent that we probably have way more than 40 trillion in debt, which is basically where we're at right now. Like, I don't see a solution to this problem. And we're not going to cut spending. because no politician has the tenacity to be able to actually stop giving out money. That's part of the reason they get elected, Democrats and Republicans. So the only solution is growth. But like, do we really grow ourselves out of 40 trillion in debt? Like maybe, but we've got to grow GDP at like a lot more than 4 to 5%. Right now we're at 2.5%. And for us to grow that much, I mean, like AI is great and everything, but man, AI has to be superb, like on a different level to increase productivity to that extent. And if it does, you're just gonna have a ton of layoffs. Like if we really do achieve AGI, you would imagine the labor market, unless we just have so much abundance and so many jobs, but then we would have a ton of inflation. So it's like, I feel like you don't even think about it. You're just like, well, in my lifetime, let me buy some stocks, hope they go up, live my life. And my kids will deal with it. What about taxing the rich? I don't think you could tax the rich either, because if you tax the rich, the amount of money that they're going to be contributing is inevitably not going to be flowing back into the economy. Like, yes, it'll help pay off some of the debt, but it's not going to pay off any significant chunk. It's definitely not going to balance the budget. And if it ends up hurting the economy, if Bezos has to give $100 billion to the government instead of investing $100 billion into new enterprises, like, I don't know, maybe that balance works out. But if it doesn't, I don't think there's any real solution to it. Let the aliens figure it out. Yeah, that might have to happen. That might have to happen. 300 billion wiped out from the US stock market today. It is interesting, dude. A little bit of a weird day. It has to be Kevin Warsh volatility. Otherwise, oil down this much, you would think we would get a nice green day, but that's just not happening here. AI will solve the debt issue. You know, there could be an argument that AI will make it worse, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, again, it's one of those things where I don't talk about the debt that much. And I think if you're an economist and you talk about the debt, it's usually fear mongering. And it's like, you know, like Ray Dalio, like we're never going to solve the debt crisis. So it's like the fact that he brings it up, it's really smart to like be like, look, this is unsustainable, because like it is unsustainable. But will it actually collapse the global economy and create massive Great Depressions across the world? It's like, I don't think so. I think as long as the belief of the debt being paid back is strong enough to be sustained, which, you know, as long as we keep kind of trying to pay back a little bit of it, it's enough to be sustained. We don't default on it. But until then, it's like you can only focus on your immediate reality. And it becomes overbearing to think that we could actually... I think if you divide the debt by the amount of American citizens, it's like $200,000 of debt per citizen in the United States, which is crazy to think about, because, you know, that's not a sizable amount of money that people have to actually even contribute to the government. SoFi right there, 1743, as that continues to go green. Why is Amazon and Google red? Why everything else is red? Honestly, I don't know. I don't see an Amazon headline. I don't see a Google headline. All I see is potentially a little bit of rotation out of some of the other large caps, but nothing specific on Amazon here. DOJ, Department of Justice, claims XAI's unpermitted gas turbines are a matter of national security. The DOJ said the DOJ sided with XAI in a lawsuit that sought to stop the company's use of dozens of unpermitted natural gas turbines near its Memphis data centers. The memorandum filed by the DOJ said Grok is one of 4 AI models that support mission-critical operations such as recent strikes on Iran. Wow. Okay, so the DOJ on Grok's side right there. Sad says, don't pay Congress unless they balance the budget. This was the classic Buffett quote about Congress people and balancing the budget. And yeah, this was Buffett 30 years ago on how he could balance the budget and end the deficit in 5 minutes.
These problems are problems that have built up over decades, and there hasn't been a Congress that's been mature enough, or a president that's been mature enough to take this head on.
I could end the deficit in 5 minutes. You just pass a law that says that anytime there's a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. Yeah. Now you've got the incentives in the right place, right? So it's capable of being done. And They're trying to use the incentive now that we're going to blow your brains out, America, in terms of your debt worthiness over time, and that's being used as a threat. A more effective threat would be just to say, if you guys can't get it done, we'll get some other guys to get it done. And it's.
I mean, he's right. He's 1,000% right. The people that control the flow of capital are our elected officials, and they have zero incentive to actually manage the budget because A, they keep getting elected. B, it's not a requirement for them to do so in their job, Republicans and Democrats. But again, I am also very nihilistic when it comes to politics. Like, I just don't believe in politics at all. You guys know this about me. I do not care about politics. I think every politician is essentially never going to solve any problem. Democrats, Republicans, Bernie, Trump, I think they're all the same. I don't think they actually care about people. I think they care about power. That is my thesis on politics. And so if the politicians don't actually care about you, it is very scary to get into the mindset to think they do care about you. It is easier to focus on yourself, your money, your family, your immediate issues you have to resolve. And I think it just leads to a happier life without believing that AOC or Trump is going to save me. So if we're never going to pass, I mean, we can't even get insider trading banned for Congress. That's how bad it is. We can't even get our elected officials who sit on the House committees of finance, health, defense, etc., to just agree to buy America, get into an index fund, and not trade individually. The fact that we can't stop them from doing that tells me that it will inevitably result in corruption at the highest of levels. Maybe it's not as corrupt as some third world countries, but it's definitely pretty corrupt. And there's not much we can do about it other than analyze what Pelosi's buying and copy trade her. But that's why when people have asked me, they're like, Amit, you know how to talk about, have you ever thought about like running for office? I'm like, no, because I think you could be much more successful in changing the world if you actually build a business or do something in relation to business and make money, because then you can actually engage in philanthropy versus try to make a change in the world by starting a movement, because inevitably the power structures that be will overtake you and you're not going to be able to get anything done. And we saw that with Elon and Doge. JP Morgan records sought in probe into Epstein's ranch. Wow. Wall Street Journal reporting Google records sought in probe into Epstein's ranch along with JP Morgan records. Huh. We stopped talking about something when the war happened. And I wonder if the war is over, do we start talking about that again? Wait, what camera do you use? Sony a6 400. It's actually a pretty old camera, to be honest, but gets the job done. Mitt, your beard is perfectly done. Do you do it yourself? I do not. If I did my beard myself, it would look horrible. I have a barber, and he does it. I actually have his phone number, dude. I'm like close with him. I don't trust myself to do my own beard. Is Netflix still taking a hit? 78.90. OSS again, a contract today for OSS. Wow, 20. Look at that. Breaking out Amcor, that 10-year partnership with TSM, that also getting a breakout. And that is green as well. You can't compare Bernie and Trump. Yeah, I mean, look, you can't logically compare them because they're on different sets of the political aisle. I just put politicians in the same bucket, which is why I don't get political. I don't need to be excited for Bernie. I don't need to be excited for Trump. I can analyze them both objectively. I'm just not a big believer in politics. I am a believer in the markets, and obviously politics has an impact on the markets, and so do oil prices. But today, oil prices are not having any impact on the markets because we are red with oil going red. SpaceX, we haven't checked SpaceX in 20 minutes. Where is SpaceX? SpaceX 210. So the bulls are holding 200. The bears are not letting it get back to 225. Him's trying to get up to 32. Why did Hood go bye-bye? Well, honestly, I don't know why they were up 5% on layoffs. I get the market always reacts positively to that, but they're going to save $20 million. It's not like they laid off, 30% of the company. So I don't know. But regardless, HOOD's made a big move from the low 70s, right? It's just breaking out into those hundreds. It needs sustained, serious bull excitement and momentum for the broader market to justify triple digits. The layoffs are not going to be enough. Do you think a tech rotation to healthcare makes sense? I've heard this thesis. I think healthcare is primed to benefit from AI. I just don't know if those stocks are going to go to the moon. I mean, Oscar's done a really good job, but Oscar was fundamentally undervalued. UNH is obviously fundamentally undervalued, but it's not the largest moving stock, although it has moved from the 230s. Tempest, I know a lot of people have thought about this one. I don't know if healthcare as a broad sector gets a massive tailwind because of AI. I mean, AI will help them, but is it going to increase earnings by even 20%, 30%? Or would you just rather buy the CapEx names that are leading to that AI being created to help the healthcare companies, So I think the healthcare thesis makes sense. I don't know if it's defensive anymore, given some of it is run. Also, the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies outside of Lilly have not meaningfully come out with a massive AI initiative that is transformed the world. Novartis has some stuff. Novo Nordisk obviously trying to figure it out with GLPs. Lilly has a big partnership with NVIDIA, so I think they've gotten a little bit more excitement. That's at $1 trillion. But talking about solving all of the world's biggest illnesses, we're still really early into the AI revolution, but it's not like Merck figured out how to solve all of our problems, or Pfizer, right? So I feel like it's still going to take some time for that to play out. It's Micron dumping. Is it actually? It's about 4%. That is a move. That is a move down. I love you, Amit, but most financial YouTubers say they're not political, and I think it's so that they don't lose viewers. Honestly, I think if I really wanted to not lose viewers, I wouldn't make any jokes. So I think that ship has sailed on protecting viewers based on what you say. Kind of made a decision 3 years ago that I'm going to make my jokes, and people are going to like it. And if they don't laugh with me, they're going to laugh at me, and they're going to keep watching. And that's how we're going to do this. So I don't know if that's the case. Shem Pasta says I'm only here for the jokes. No, but in all seriousness, dude, I really don't care about politics. Do I want to lose viewers from being super political? No, I don't think anyone wants to. But do I also want to waste people's time in the morning when they care about market analysis by telling them my thoughts on abortion? No, obviously not. I wouldn't want to listen to a financial YouTuber's thoughts on gun rights. I'm there to listen to you about perspectives on the market, not politics, So it's really doesn't even have anything to do with keeping viewers happy. It's not even like the, Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers. I'm not even thinking of it from that. I just genuinely think it would be bad content to yap about politics. So I think that's the other reason. Marvell, did we lose 300? Oh boy, 297. That has lost 300. That has indeed lost 300. There's also a famous Chamath clip that I always credit on not caring about politics. I saw this clip back in 2017. And honestly, this clip changed my life. And I know Chamath, scammer, SPAC king, yada, yada, yada. I get it. But this clip, genuinely, I remember I was in my dorm room in 2017. I saw this clip and I was like, I'm going to care more about money over politics.
And let's create new rules.
Let me get better audio right there. This one, I really do think it's the right thesis.
Get the fucking money. I'm serious. Do not get it. It is going to be made. It is going to be allocated. And you have a moral imperative to make sure that if you have a point of view that matters and you want to reflect it, you get it. I'm going to go get it. Other people are going to go get it. And then
now he got it by scamming people. So don't the way you get it also matters. But the point is, it's a moral imperative in life to go get it versus be concerned about, the politician's going to get it for you.
It will be about a competition of views. And don't wrap yourself in all this like, liberal kind of bullshit about like, oh my God, money, blah. No, stop. Here's how the fucking world works, okay? It drives the world for better or for worse. Economic incentives drive entire swaths of populations to behave in very, very predictable, and then when you take it away, unpredictable ways. I want the fucking money. I will play the goddamn game and I'll win because I want the money, because I want to extend my influence. Do you know what I'm saying?
For better or for worse, I believe in that. If you want to have influence, you need to get the money, which means you need to actually go do something in the world and be productive. And I think politics is the easiest way to be unproductive and not get the money. Now, in the path to getting the money, you can't lose yourself, right? Even if you listen to Eminem, you have to stay true to yourself. And that takes a certain personality because, quite frankly, you can do amazing things and get the money, or you can do scammy SPACs and pump them on CNBC and get retail investors to hold the bag and get the money. So there's a way to get the money that is more ethical than not. And forget even ethics. Like, can you live with yourself in how you get your money? And if I did what Chamath did, I don't know if I would be able to go to sleep at night knowing what I did. But I damn sure wouldn't be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I'm trying to start a movement and save the world, when realistically business and economic incentives is what drives that, not the words of a politician. And quite frankly, the words of a politician are rooted in economic incentives that they don't have any control over because they don't have any power until they get power, and then they realize the business people have all the power. So that is my spiel on why I don't care about politics. Qualcomm going red on the day, 219. Qs, oh boy, that is very, very red. 735. The fact that SpaceX is holding 210 with the Qs down 1.5% is kind of weird. SPY should be getting below 750. It's only at 752 right here. So that one is not fully down either. But we are indeed red. Dude, what a day. Oil drops the lowest level in 4 months and markets can't catch a bid. We have TT today? Yes, we'll have TT with Jason on the close. SPY 752. Broadcom. Dude, they might as well take it back to 350. Losing 380. Like, take this back. Give us some real dips here. Microsoft as well. Take her to 380. Microsoft 393. As that continues to go down. Amit, I'm watching you from Greece. It is afternoon here. I feel it's a bit funny that the word of the day very often has Greek roots. Dude, yesterday, I really don't know how ChatGPT gave me that word. Like, that was the weirdest word. You know what? Let's get the word of the day right now. It's 11:30 anyway. Yeah, we're about to end it right here. So let's get the word of the day. Yeah, I was surprised that it gave me that word. I was like, where did you get that word from, bro? Why would you do that? Amit, do you want to talk to Ed Zitron? Dude, I've analyzed his bear case. I don't really agree with it. He was on Breaking Points yesterday, and I listened to him again, and he just sounded like he was gasping for straws, bro. Like, his arguments, there's some arguments I think make somewhat sense, and then there's other arguments where I'm like, you could tell he doesn't even feel confident in what he's saying. You know? He's like, oh, I just don't believe the numbers. I'm like, hold on. Like, you can't just say you don't believe the numbers. Like, there are numbers that are either real or fake. You can't just say you don't believe it, because what if you're wrong? Like, what if your belief is wrong? You give me the spiel about circular financing and this and have your theory of how things play out, but like, there's some parts of his arguments where I'm like, he's getting a lot of attention. I think, once again, when you have a massive bull market, if you're the person on the island being bearish, you're going to get a lot of media attention because the media wants a counter voice. And so this Ed Zitron guy is getting all the attention in the world because he's the counter voice and he has a nice British accent and the guy's eloquent when he speaks. But I think fundamentally, a lot of his arguments, they're not original. They're definitely not as original as Burry's arguments. At least Burry had some originality to them last year. So I'd love to talk to the guy. I just don't think it's as strong of a case. Okay, I think that's it for us. We'll do word of the day. What else do we've got? Is there Anything else? Again, no crazy headlines for the Qs or the SPY going down. Warish volatility we've still got to deal with. SoFi is at least holding 17 based on the idea of rate cuts. It's actually doing way better than Robinhood today, up 2.3%. Keel getting a nice little bid. CoreWeave and Nebius at least holding on to some of their pump. CoreWeave a bit more than Nebius. Nebius up 1%. We're back on the close for TT, but outside of that, I don't think we have any other crazy headlines here. I mean, SpaceX obviously taking up a lot of attention, but yeah, 214. I mean, it's not that far away from heading right back to all-time highs. Maybe that does end up happening. Oh, we got a new presidential memo. Trump invokes Defense Production Act over systemic constraints in munitions industry. Wow. Trump cites limited production capacity, fragile supply chains when invoking Defense Production Act. That is interesting. Basically, this means federal law is going to force U.S. factories to prioritize making bullets, missiles, and military equipment faster because American weapon stockpiles are running dangerously low. This means defense companies will get guaranteed government money and contracts to massively ramp up production. Palantir, little green candle right there. Lockheed Martin, little green candle. And then Raytheon, that's up 0.5% as well. Yeah, SpaceX actually theoretically, I mean, SpaceX is one of the biggest defense contractors as well. So that might end up helping them. That's also probably going to help Anduril and potentially could help Rock Lab as part of Golden Dome. Okay, that's what you got. We also have one more headline coming in right here. As per Sensor Tower, ChatGPT has now dropped 50% or dropped below 50% of market share for AI assistants. Wow, ChatGPT 46.4, Gemini's at 27, Claude's at 10. Again, this is consumer, not necessarily enterprise. ChatGPT is obviously crushing it in the consumer space. But the other ones, not necessarily. Okay. There you go. That is what you got. All right, word of the day. Word of the day. Let's do it. Word of the day. What do we got? Okay, this word still is kind of hard to pronounce. Epothegm? A short, memorable saying that expresses a general truth or wise observation. Yeah, see, this is interesting. Look at this. The market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent is a famous investing apothegm. How do we go from that word to what we had yesterday, which was a well-shaped, attractive buttocks? Like, that was a glitch in the system. How does it give me a word for an attractive butt and then go back to investing words? I thought bootylicious would be the next word. It's because you spelled done wrong. Okay, I did spell done wrong. I said, give me another run, R-O-N-E. But if ChatGPT is stupid enough to not know I was saying, give me another one, because I have an R there. Like, that's crazy, bro. And then it goes back to investing, or at least using a word in an investing context. Okay, how do we say this? How do we say this word? Apothegm. Okay, let's see.
Apothame.
Yeah, there's no way I was getting that, bro. No way in hell I was getting that. Apothame? What? Apothame, really? Yeah, no. That wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen. But there you go. That's your word of the day. How do you say it again? Apothame?
Apothame.
Apothame. Yeah, I think we all got that one wrong. I would imagine. All right, well, that's it for me, folks. We'll be back Technical Tuesday with Jason today. We will continue seeing how SpaceX plays out. Again, no other crazy headlines for the day. Most of these stocks are red. Not massively, but enough where Micron down 4, Marvell down 4. They're definitely reversing from their pre-market highs. The Q still down 1. SpaceX holding on to that green. Amazon, Google, a little bit of green. CoreWeave, more green. Nebius, a little bit of green. Software names are down. FinTech is down outside of SoFi. And the rest of your semis slightly still right on the day. All right, folks. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll be back on the market close, and we'll get into technicals later today. All right, everybody. Have a good one.